like Turkey, Asia Minor, what is now the modern country of Turkey, was called Pontus. And you had Cappadocia, places like that. So that is how, generally speaking, the Catholic Church is organized now: diocese and archdiocese.
Oh, absolutely, and it's all their entire. And just a heads up, George, I went live just because we were a little shorter on time. Just welcome everyone. We got another Cirucci team brief here, December 20th, 2019. And to your point, their entire terminology, that the current incarnation of the Roman Empire today, the Holy Roman Catholic Empire. But like you say, they everyone can look up. They have the whole world quartered off into dioceses, just like how the ancient Roman Republican system had it. And just an interesting. I'm going to link this book just because reading this book got me thinking more about the correlation between the American Republic and the ancient Roman Republic. But it said, the whole way that at least especially in American society, there in the ancient Roman Republic, there was something called the publicani. And this quote comes from the book here of The Roman Republic and the American Republic by Montel Pearson. But she says here that this ties into the Pentagon, which I'm sure you're aware of, George. The U.S. Pentagon building was modeled off of the Villa Farnese in Capelona, Italy, which was a military center for the Black nobility Farnese family, and Pope Paul III of Farnese, he was the Pope that signed off to create the Jesuit order in 1534. But there's so many similarities between ancient Roman society and our current society. But so this highlights it here. So the author is referring to Gaius Caesar, Julius Caesar's father. Once he arrived in his province, a new governor was likely to meet with other prominent Romans who were deeply invested in the area. These were Roman businessmen, members of the equestrian order. Now, just pause there. I'm sure you've heard this, George, but if people aren't aware, one of the biggest knighthoods in the Catholic Church today, the Roman Catholic Church, is the equestrian order, the Holy Equestrian Order of the Sepulchre. I believe it's the word equestrian is in that order. It's the Holy Equestrian Order of the Sepulchre. And recently, the current Grand Master is the Cardinal Edwin Frederick O'Brien, who is the former Archbishop of the Military Services, one of the biggest war hawks in the United States, advocating to keep the U.S. and Afghanistan and Iraq. And we know just recently with the Afghanistan papers, the U.S. has spent $166 billion quote, rebuilding Afghanistan since 2002. But you see with the ancient, so like the term the equestrian order, that's an ancient term, this order dates back all the way back to BC in the ancient Roman Republic times. But so the Roman businessmen were members of the quote equestrian order who moved into the captured provinces and seized upon dozens of opportunities to engage in profitable commerce that came naturally to citizens of the occupying power. The most powerful of these international businessmen were known as publicani. While many members of the equestrian order were businessmen, the publicani were distinct in their role of carrying out administrative and manufacturing activities in close partnership with the state. The publicani were essential members of the state system because, as one dimension of their belief in limiting the power of government, the Romans privatized many government functions, just like how the United States has privatized many government functions. George H.W. Bush signed a special executive order 12803 called infrastructure privatization. Like this quote's almost done here. The publicani formed joint stock companies that bid for contracts to work for the state. This is exactly how the Pentagon works right now. Herbert Holdridge called this Pentagonism in his book, How to Gain Freedom from Economic Slavery, where he said that if the country turns into a socialist state for the Pentagon, where the Pentagon sucks up all of the money of the U.S. budget, which is currently Trump just increased the budget by like $40 billion. But just this is almost done, George. They provided the public works such as roads and aqueducts, supplies such as horses and armor, and services, particularly tax collection, in return for a cash payment from the state. The publicani became the richest businessmen in the equestrian order because their contracts with the state were very large with guaranteed profits. They were similar to the cost-plus contracts awarded by the Pentagon.
Well,
so that's an interesting quote. So I'm going to link that there, but that just shows like the current idea of the Pentagon giving out like massive contracts to Lockheed, massive, guaranteed profit contracts to Raytheon. I did a whole video that the Jesuits are in complete control of the Raytheon company. The current CEO, Thomas Kennedy, sits on the board of directors at Jesuit Boston College. But you see this whole, our current, if you look into it, our current society dates back to the Roman Republic. This Pentagon contract example, or military contract example is a good one.
Well, that reminds me of Margaret Thatcher, who died back in 2013. She was a prime minister of the UK from 1979 to 1990. So basically, she was a contemporary of Ronald Reagan. And one of the things that came out, they mentioned in her obituary 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago, was how during her reign, so to speak, she engaged in massive privatization. Things, institutions that had been that had been public before she came to power, were now in the hands of private businesses, such as the railways in England. And you had mixed reviews, but people used to say Thatcher was basically the British version of Ronald Reagan. And I'm not as familiar with her as I probably should be. They called her the Iron Lady. And for what it's worth, she was a Dame of Malta, because you can just do a Google image search of her, and she's wearing her black cape with her Maltese crosses. And I know she had at least one audience with John Paul II. Now, I realize that doesn't really pertain to what you're talking about, but that just popped in my mind.
Well, George, so one of Margaret Thatcher's key advisors was Lord Christopher Monckton, Knight of Malta, currently in the House of Lords.
Currently.
And the British House of Lords, if you think about it, is pretty much identically modeled off the ancient Roman Senate. And the U.S. Senate, is modeled off of the Roman Senate. That's even admitted on the U.S. Senate's Wikipedia page.
Oh, okay. So, as I said, and it's unfortunate because, for what it's worth, Margaret Thatcher's background was dominantly Protestant. Her father was a Methodist preacher, and she actually became an Anglican after she married her husband. And so, people who, you have two major political parties in the UK. You have the Conservatives, the Tories, and you have Labour. So roughly, the Conservatives are like the American Republicans, and Labour is like the Democrats. So Labour has basically worked to actively destroy Britain, while the Conservatives just sit by and let them get away with it, and they just talk a good game, just like here in America. And so, anyhow, owing to time constraints, I just like to. I don't have a good segue into that, but I come across a couple of things recently, and something that Johnny has talked about, and various other people who've been affiliated with him, like Felipe, is James Martian, SJ, the editor of America Magazine here in America. And something we were talking about before we went live is, has Martin officially come out of the closet? I don't think so, but he all has but done that. And something we've discovered is Rome has been one of the major catalysts in the LGBT community, at least in America, for decades. And it came across recently, the other day, a priest, a late Catholic priest, or ex-priest, John McNeil, S.J. McNeil lived from 1924-25 until 2015. Among other things, he specifically was ordained by Francis Joseph Cardinal Spellman. So that's...
How fitting.
So anyhow,
I'm gonna pull this up because people aren't aware. I'm gonna pull up this guy's wiki. You literally found the father of the LGBT movement, and who is a Jesuit.
Yes.
How fitting.
So why don't you bring him up?
Okay, so I pulled up. Okay, here's the wiki page you brought up here. Yeah, so I'll link his page in the chat. But it's John J. McNeil, was an American Roman Catholic priest, psychotherapist, academic theologian, with a particular reputation within the field of queer theology. That's how he's referred to there. Ordained by Cardinal Spellman through the Society of Jesus in 1959. Spellman as himself, was a Jesuit. Like Antonelli was a Jesuit back in Pius IX's time. But John J. McNeil obtained a PhD from the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium, and then taught at Jesuit Lemoyne College in Syracuse, New York. This ties into what we were saying earlier about how there's so many similarities between ancient Rome and the United States. Syracuse is named after an ancient Roman city, that being Syracuse. And the Jesuits have a college in Syracuse, Lemoyne College. And maybe I'll go into it later in the show. Cincinnati is named after a Roman statesman, Cincinnatus. And George Washington compared himself to the Roman Cincinnatus. And he was a member of the Society of Cincinnatus. But the Jesuit John McNeil then taught at Jesuit Fordham University. And then he joined the combined Woodstock Jesuit Seminary and Union Theological Seminary faculty as professor in Christian ethics, specializing in sexual ethics. This guy just passed away in 2015. But his big book here in 1976 was called The Church and the Homosexual. This was like the groundbreaking work here that I believe this was, the first big book published by, the Catholic Church that said, like, we're on board with the homosexual LGBT agenda. So I'm just going to read his book catalog. He wrote The Church and the Homosexual, Taking a Chance on God, Liberating Theology for Gays, Lesbians, and Their Lovers, Families, and Friends. Then the Jesuit John J. McNeil wrote Freedom, Glorious Freedom, The Spiritual Journey to the Fullness of Life for Gays, Lesbians, and Everybody Else. Then the Jesuit wrote Both Feet Firmly Planted in Midair, My Spiritual Journey. And then he wrote Sex as God Intended. So that sounds like that last book he's saying that God intended for people to be gay, which we're all gay. The human race goes extinct, so I don't think that's the way to go. But you see here, the John J. McNeil, S.J. This guy's literally the Jesuit father of the LGBT movement, and just great find, George. It connects a lot of dots with the other research we've done with, like Elizabeth Birch, who went to Jesuit Santa Clara, being the biggest LGBT advocate in America for over 20 years. The current Jesuit Pope Francis is literally flying LGBT rainbow flags at the Vatican. Obama's Cardinal Joseph Bernardin, the Archbishop of New York, who took Barack Obama under his wing in Chicago. He's like a huge LGBT they're flying rainbow flags at his funeral recently.
Oh, well, good for him. But you see, that reminds me. So we have some circumstantial evidence, some strong circumstantial evidence that Rome was behind or is behind the whole LGBTQ movement. And well, you can simply say her apologists could say, well. You could say somebody like McNeil or James Marshall, they're outliers. They're dissident priests. They weren't properly formed. They were, as a whole, it is still official Catholic policy to be against homosexuality, but to actually not allow people to engage in that behavior. Now, you are familiar with Michael Voris of the Vortex?
Oh yeah, Michael. Yeah, Church Militant. Yeah, I'm aware.
Okay, so I know Johnny has sent out a number of videos from that, and he's actually subscribed to them. Now, inexplicably, maybe he has, but I don't think I've ever heard Michael Voris mention the name McNeil before. He talks at great lengths about the turpitude of Jim Martin, S.J., but he's never mentioned John J. McNeil. And I mean, maybe that was a glaring oversight on his part. Now, as I said, McNeil was born about the year 1925, and so he was ordained in the 1950s. You said 1959 by none other than Spellman himself. So now somebody like conservative Catholics, like Michael Boris, conservative traditional Latin Mass Catholics will say, well, McNeil was not a real Catholic, and he was not a real Catholic priest. And something that Boris and those of his ilk have been spouting for years is roughly 100 years ago, communists, Freemasons, and homosexuals infiltrated the Catholic Church. They got into the seminaries and schools, and they tried to take over. And McNeil is just simply a byproduct of that. Okay, well, I know that's just a cover story, but the Jesuits, the quote Society of Jesus, end quote, they have been insurgents ever since their inception. They want to do anything they can to innovate and destroy a society, even if it's a Catholic society, a Catholic country like France, like Italy, or wherever. Because um, if you if you introduce this aberrant behavior, homosexuality, you destroy the society. Because as you just said a moment ago, if we're all that way, we would die out. And what what this religious order has done for almost 500 years is create division, create acrimony, create bitterness. And I don't mean to keep bringing up Donald Trump, but he's a perfect example. And for those who don't know, maybe this is the first time they've listened to your broadcast or something similar to it. Donald Trump was trained by the Jesuits. He attended for 2 years. At least three of his adult children were also at least partially trained by them. Eric got his degree. His daughter Ivanka attended Georgetown, and his daughter Tiffany is going to Georgetown Law School. So some people could say, people out of ignorance could say, well, Donald Trump went to Fordham back in the 1960s, over 50 years ago, and because he didn't know any better. Well, that's a stretch.
Yeah, I was saying that his dad took him to the Al Smith dinner, so I wouldn't buy that.
Okay, so now it's one thing he might, get it past and say, hey, maybe he's young and stupid, he didn't know anything about the Jesuits, whatever. But he said at least three of his adult children have been at least partially educated by them. I don't think so. There's a pattern here. And something I've mentioned before, at least three of the Pelosi children have been completely educated by the Jesuits. Paulie Pelosi, Nancy's son, he went to Georgetown. Christina Pelosi, she also went to Georgetown. Alexandria went to Loyola, LA. Paul, her husband, is on the board of directors at Georgetown. Also, can just throw it in, Tommy DeBrazio, or whatever her maiden name is, her brother, he went to Loyola, Baltimore.
Oh yeah, and Pelosi, yeah, he was the mayor there, wasn't he? Pelosi's brother.
Yes, Tommy was, and I believe her dad was also Thomas DeBrazio. So you have at least 5 people in the Pelosi families who have some sort of affiliation with the Jesuits. You have at least 3 or 4 people.
Well, I don't mean to bash Nancy Pelosi, Joyce, but just she can barely hold a sentence together when I hear her talking at her press conferences. Such a Jesuit puppet. I have the video on my channel. She said, I'm so excited, literally 8 times, maybe even 10 times. When I have a video of a press conference she gave when Jesuit Pope Francis became Pope. She's literally gloating about it. She's I'm so excited to see the Pope. I'm so excited. And then she's I can't wait to come back and tell my colleagues all about seeing the Pope and hope that they are excited about it too. It's so over the top. She, you can see maybe I'll pull this up here, George. I'm going to go to screen share because this highlights the point, especially about Trump, that do people really think that Trump is not controlled by the church, the Roman system, when there's literally a Roman fasces in Trump's Oval Office in the White House? I'm right here where my mouse is. So it's right. Trump is completely controlled, and I have done articles going through just Trump's appointment to Georgetown University. And Trump has probably nominated literally over 45 people into his administration from Georgetown. You see my photo here, George. Here's Nancy Pelosi kissing the ring of Pope Benedict XVI at the Pope's arrival ceremony at the South Lawn of the White House, April 16th, 2008. And here's George Bush laughing up with her. Aren't they supposed to be enemies? Republican and Democrat. And Condoleezza Rice, there's a Republican here too. They all work together. But you see April 16th, 2008. Here's the photo. You can really see Pelosi kissing Benedict XVI's ring. And actually, I have the video on my channel. I even have the dialogue up here with Bush. Bush actually said in the interview, I have the whole transcript up here from Raymond Arroyo, the interview he gave with Raymond Arroyo, April 11th, 2008. But this is what Bush said to Raymond Arroyo. So Raymond Arroyo said, when you look into Benedict XVI's eyes, what do you see? You see the president, God. And then Arroyo says, good way to end the interview. And then the president says, thank you, sir. So like that is there a better example of like this? So in that example, so you have Pelosi kissing Benedict XVI's ring. She's supposedly a way far left Democrat. Then you have Bush saying he sees God in the eyes of the same Pope Benedict XVI, and he's supposedly way far right.
Well, it's interesting. I mentioned this to you before, or mentioned this on the show before. There is a left-wing talk show host here in America named Tom Hartman. He's been popular for I'm not sure how long, but he's 1998. He and his wife Louise went to meet with John Paul II, and they're both dressed in black, and they both kissed his ring and got his his blessing or whatever it is they got from him. Well, anyhow, as I said, Tom Hartman, if you want to check off all the boxes, gun control, abortion, homosexuality, you name it, he checks off all the boxes correctly, and he loves bashing Ronald Reagan, and perhaps rightfully so. He talked about how wicked Ronald Reagan was, how he destroyed the middle class in America during his watch, which is essentially true. However, one little detail he didn't mention is both Reagan and Hartman met with John Paul II. Now, Reagan met with him 6 times, including at least once after he left office. This is according to Paul Kingor in the 2017 tome, A Pope and a President, when he was talking about the relationship between Ronald Reagan and John Paul II. Me, Carol Wojtyla. Yes, Carol, the Zyklon B salesman Wojtyla. So, anyhow,
George, heads up, Johnny joined in the chat here just about 30 seconds ago. And if people aren't aware, Reagan had an amazingly close relationship with John Paul II. You can see videos of from the Reagan Library where Reagan's meeting the Pope at various airports in the United States. You can see 5 or 6 speeches they gave together. Reagan famously would say, "I'm crusading for the family in the spirit of John Paul II." But welcome, Johnny. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to be here, guys.
So, anyhow, we were talking. I'm not sure how much of you caught of our broadcast, Johnny, but a few minutes ago we were talking about the late John J. McNeil, S.J., who is considered to be arguably the father, or at least the spiritual father of the LBGT community. And
that's a phenomenal find. I don't mean to cut you off. It was your find. Outstanding job. This reminds me, George, of one of the co-founders of NAMBLA, the North American Man-Boy Love Association, being a Jesuit priest, Paul Shanley. Okay, so this really just goes so far to back up what we have been saying all along, that the Roman Catholic Church, the Jesuit-run and controlled Roman Catholic Church, is the top of the New World Order pyramid. We are the only ones out there giving the full and complete truth. The only ones. No one else will touch this. And yet it's absolutely critical. You won't understand any of it. You won't understand any of the symptoms unless you see the big picture.
Well, you're,
Go
George, you able to move your mic there first, George? Or in your pocket or something?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not a hologram, so I do have to interact with the real world.
Anyway, so listen, it's my fault for interrupting you. Go ahead and get back onto this Jesuit who is, what is it? What did Wikipedia call him? A queer theologian? Pardon my language. Are you fucking kidding me? A queer theologian. What else did I find? We found the layman, the Jesuit layman theology teacher that looks at the crucifixion of Jesus Christ as gay eroticism. I'll get the details of that in a second. It's I think it's at Holy Cross. Give me a second. I'll pull that up. Shit you not. Being tortured to death, having railroad spikes jammed into your hands and feet, having the flesh ripped off your body in scourging. This is homosexual eroticism if you go to Holy Cross, Jesuit Holy Cross, and that's what you get taught. I'll get you the details, the name of this clown in a second if you guys want to jump in there. Hold on.
No, yeah, definitely. That's definitely worth bringing up. Yeah, and I reckon people should read your book, Johnny, Eaters of Children, for the detailed expose of the deeds connected to the Roman Catholic Church, in particular the Jesuits, like you mentioned there with Paul Shanley. A Jesuit priest founded the North American Man Boy Love Association. You know, that's just disgusting stuff. And you're one of the few people I've seen, Johnny, go at Father Marcial, founder of the Legions of Christ. And
let me tell you real quick.
He was a huge pedophile. He was you bring up he was close with the CIA director, you know, William Casey, who would fly to the Vatican in a windowless C-141 jet.
So another one who we would have been better off if his parents had sterilized themselves. The fact that they named him Marcial, you should have realized that there was a problem right away. He had many illicit love affairs, and then he actually raped one of his own bastard children. And part of the psyop he gave this family as to why he lived the life he did was that he was in the CIA. Now, the one or two journalists that talk about this clown immediately leads you to the conclusion that, hey, this was obviously just a story that he told. No. Are you a journalist? I say the same thing to the corrupt piece of shit cops. Are you a journalist? Are you a cop? You don't draw any unfounded conclusion. The fact is that this monster had an illicit bastard child and then raped his own son and then told his family that he was connected to the CIA. Stop. Those are the facts. You don't draw conclusions. You investigate the facts. You look into whether or not he had ties to the CIA. Turns out that Casey, the Catholic CIA director, gave him fat donations at the time. So it's very plausible. This is the same thing.
People should realize the implications of that, Johnny. Just, you know, how involved William Casey was in the world geopolitics. Like, you know, this guy. We found sources that he was laundering millions of dollars of Saudi Arabian cash in the Vatican banks. You know, Casey was he signed Reagan's executive order legalizing the CIA drug trafficking trade, the 12333. Like that's just a huge, profound. I think that it shows like the Holy Roman Empire is reincarnated with the current United States leadership or the United States government, not normal American people, but This goes into all of the symbolism. I don't know if you saw the fasces in the White House, Johnny. We showed that earlier on the stream here with George. Like the busts of the popes in the Capitol building. And I just started looking into this more, and rereading Saucy's book. I'm looking into the whole foundational, like in terms of the philosophic creations of the American Republic, looking at links between the old Roman Republic to the American Republic, and like there has to be like there's a deep, profound reason why these Catholic Roman agents in the Catholic hierarchy are untouchable in this current law system. Because the research I've done, I think that they essentially created the modern legal system that we're involved in. That's even if you go to the Wikipedia page of Roman law, the Roman law Wikipedia page, it says almost all modern governments use Roman law as a basis of their civil codes.
They're in it. They're absolutely in it. They own it. They run it. I can't tell you how disgusted I am with the legal profession. I can't tell you how disgusted I am. I have been trying so long to get legal assistance in relation to the scam that was pulled on me by YouTube, by Google. So I did an interview with William Ramsey recently, and William, God love him, said, "Hey, listen, I got the name of this ambulance chasing piece of shit." Pardon me. That's not what he said, but that's how I feel. And he's suing YouTube right now. He's the perfect guy. He's the perfect guy for you to go in and ask and see if you can jump in and have them be a part of a class action lawsuit against Google YouTube because of the way that YouTube turned over your personal identification information to that piece of shit little cockroach Lenny Posner. Needless to say, the asshole doesn't answer his phone. He doesn't have a secretary answer his phone. Doesn't respond to the voicemail and hasn't responded to the email. I wipe my ass with all lawyers. They are all absolutely useless. The only time they get involved is when the game is rigged in their fucking favor. Let me say that again. The only time lawyers get involved to do anything righteous is when it happens to serve them and suit them and it falls in their favor. It is an absolute massively corrupt joke law owned by the Catholic Church again. And Eric, you did fantastic work on this. No one else is going to bring you this and explain it to you. They get on this bullshit about maritime law and gold fringe and this and that, just like our buddy Eric John Phelps. All that is subterfuge. Subterfuge. He's playing Russian roulette with you. He dares you to jump in their game and play it their way, and he claims you're going to win. Please don't be that stupid.
Yeah, it's as simple as with this current system. Like once you sign a contractual agreement, with this Roman contractual citizenship system, like there's no way out. Like, so that's yeah. So it's very disingenuous, and it's not just Phelps. There's tons. Like you could probably find like 50 to 100 of them out there, guys who are willing to sell you quote unquote papers, for like couple $1,000, and they'll say, hey, if you use these documents in a court of law, you'll become like a free, naturalized citizen. And 9 times out of 10, when this happens, these guys end up just going to jail. When they try to pull this stuff up in court. We've seen like with the Epstein case, like there's no quote rule of law. Also, like they'll bend the quote unquote law as it is to fit their. Like look at Epstein got 13 months in jail, 6 days off. 6 days of the week on house arrest, and then they killed him on suicide watch. Unprecedented. Yeah. So I guess there's absolutely no rule of law, and you can go into like the recent financial cases. Like I think the HSBC one this exemplifies that better than no other. They literally admit to laundering drugs for over 15 years, billions of dollars in drugs laundered. Not one person goes to jail. That's the power of the purse. And just like in the ancient Roman Republic, the power of the purse ruled. Like I read the quote with George. There was an elite aristocratic class called the publicani, who basically owned all of the wealth of the Roman Republic and Empire, and they got the massive government contracts, like Warren Buffett does today. Apple, all the big American monopolies are subsidized by the state. Like the U.S. government gives like $230 billion out to the biggest established monopolies in society. It's just, I don't know, just looking at it kind of deeper, there's so many profound correlations to how the American Republic and the Roman Republic operate. And then the fact that Washington he wrote his rules of civility modeled off of a Jesuit book of French etiquette. We brought that up before. Like the Capitol building, is it's pretty undeniable that it's modeled off of the Roman Capitol with the obelisk there, the domed capital. The goddess Persephone. There's 12 fasces actually propping up Persephone. At the domed capital, it's kind of hidden, but underneath Persephone, there's actually 12 Roman fasces at the Capitol building. We know the Capitol building was the property of lay Jesuit Daniel Carroll. And it's just great. And I think there's a movie called Secrets of the Architecture, something like that. But I know
that's Pinto. That's one of Pinto's.
Pinto's. Yeah, but I know Saucy brings this up though. But like people just look at there's literally a pentagram laid out in the Power of DC, and it's an inverted pentagram with the bottom point pointing to the White House, which is like profound black magic.
That's a Christian J. Pinto. That there's a trilogy of documentaries, and they're all very good. And you'll never. I'm pretty sure he never touches Rome in any of those 3 documentaries. He spins around and around and hits Freemasonry and blah blah blah. But he's controlled opposition. He's absolutely controlled opposition. Okay, so real quick, here are the details on that outrage. Let's see. This guy, let's see. What is his? I think he's Asian. Yeah. Tat Seong Benny Liu. Tat Seong hyphen Benny Liu. T-A-T-S-I-O. Pardon me. T-A-T hyphen S-I-O-N-G. Benny Liu. L-I-E-W. Okay. Let's see. What does he teach? He teaches that Jesus was a drag queen, and that while he's being tortured to death, his thoughts are of a sexual nature towards his father. Okay? So this is the theology. He's in charge of the entire theology department at Holy Cross. He's in charge of it.
Wow. Is he an SJ priest then, or is he just like
no, he's a layman.
A layman in charge.
He's a layman. He's not ordained, but he certainly could be. He certainly could be. How many people know that the North American Man-Boy Love Association was co-founded by a Roman Catholic priest? How many people? Paul Shanley. How many people know that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, George.
I mean, prior to hearing that from you, I did not know that, and that that surprised me. Something we were talking about is John McNeil, SJ, and I know conservative Latin Mass Catholics will respond. Well, they'll say, like Michael Boris, they'll say that Shanley or McNeil were outliers, or they were symptoms of men who should never have been ordained, let alone men who should have been excommunicated. According to Voris and people of his ilk, this is part of a plot, a communist, Freemasonic, homosexual plot to infiltrate and destroy the church, which was hatched about 100 years ago. It was under, these agents came to the West, particularly America, and infiltrated Catholic schools, and they decided to infiltrate the orders in general and the Jesuits in particular. So, according to Voris, all we need to do in the Catholic Church, or all they need to do in the Catholic Church, is clean house just by getting rid of the leaven. And McNeil was just simply, now in all the videos I've watched of Michael Voris over the years, I don't recall him mentioning McNeil or Spellman for that matter. And I also don't remember him mentioning Shanley. Yes, he'll go on all day and all night about Joseph Cardin Bernardin and Teddy Hesburgh, and more recently James March and SJ. but he won't talk about these figures from the past, from the 1950s and 40s and before that. So,
yeah, George, this guy he's got to be read in, George. He's got to be a knowing, willing pawn of the Catholic Church. For the longest time, I was listening and watching him. He wouldn't even say the word Jesuit. He wouldn't even say the word Jesuit. Mm-hmm. He'd talk about James Martin all day. He'd talk about anti-Pope Francis all day and never mention that they're Jesuits. This is the Catholic Church. This is the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is very, very far left. The Catholic Church is the genesis of left-wing thought, ideology, communism. It owns communism. It created communism. It promotes communism. It owns communism.
I was saying the Jesuit. Sorry, no, just quickly, Joey. The Jesuit Thomas Reese I have on my channel. He actually said the Vatican is to the left of the Democrats. I have that footage on my channel. And I would say just with Voris, what made me think he was right, and George brought this up, was when he gave that video, I think back in 2010, about there being no Protestants on the Supreme Court. And he was basically like kind of cheering on that now there's no, for the first time in American history, there's not one punitive Protestant on the Supreme Court. I think that's
yeah, I haven't seen that. I'll look for it.
It's an interesting quote, but he definitely I think it's the classic disinformation by omission, because I think he gives enough good exposés of the clergy to keep Latin math Catholics still there, to think that maybe there's a hope that things will change. And
let me tell you something. I saw a comment on his YouTube channel that said exactly that. They know that's their mission, and they know that it works. There are Catholics who were about to leave the church until Michael the Militant Voris popped up out of nowhere. And now they're sticking around, staying on the reservation. What is the Latin for the papal bull the Farnese did that constituted or the Jesuits?
Well, I think in Latin is regimente militantis ecclesiae for the church. Yeah. For the people in the church militant? That's
yes.
In English?
For the church militia. In Constitution of the Church Militia. That's the Farnese Pope Paul III creating the Jesuits on September 27th, the birthday of Google, in 1540. The word church militant is in the papal bull that constitutes the Jesuits. But Michael Voris is one of us, folks, really. And real quick, I just saw, who did I say? Luke. Luke says Capitol, Capitol. Where have I seen that spelling before? Let me tell you something. The fact that there are multiple spellings of capital, that's done on purpose because they want to obfuscate where that word comes from. It comes from one of the 7 hills of Rome, Capitoline Hill. Every seat of government is its capital. Every seat, everywhere, is its capital. Where does it derive its authority? Rome.
Well, I'm going to show that really here with the screen share. I found this on the Supreme Court building on the west entrance. You can see my screen here. These are Roman centurions at the U.S. Supreme Court. And here are 2 fasces. One here where my mouse is on the left, and one here on the right. And we mentioned on the last stream we did, me and George, quickly just debunked the idea that Jews or Protestants or Muslims or any group besides the Roman Catholics are controlling the Supreme Court. There's 6 open Catholics on the court. The one Protestant judge, Cirucci, was educated by Jesuits at Georgetown Prep, and the 2 Jewish justices, Stephen Breyer and Ginsburg, are connected to the Jesuits. Ginsburg's late husband, Martin Ginsburg, was professor at Georgetown, and Stephen Breyer got the Stein Prize from Fordham. But this is just profound. I just found this like a couple days ago. This at the U.S. Supreme Court, and I don't know if you've seen, like, on the Architect of the Capitol website, like they admit that the court is a Roman temple. And just another profound. I don't know. The Bermuda corridors was a big revelation for me too. The Bermuda corridors, and maybe you can go into this too a bit more. I know you got lots of information on this guy, Johnny. But Constantino Bermuda, a papal decorator, an artist, was essentially like he designed the U.S. building or the rotunda in the Capitol. Bermidi designed the Bermidi corridors, were named after him. And these Bermidi corridors in the Capitol are a literal carbon copy of the Raphael Loggias in the Vatican, in the Pope's Papal Palace. And this is admitted, on the architect of the Capitol site. And if you just look at photos of the Bermidi corridors, it has like the grand Vatican-esque architecture, all sorts of allegorical symbols in the ceilings. It's just crazy just when you look at some of the symbolism. I couldn't believe it. There's statues of Jesuit priests in the Congress, Eusebio Kino S.J. and like Father Jacques Marquette S.J. Marquette University is named after.
Hiding in plain sight. Who is in fact, all of the traitorous puppet scum, when they were salivating all over the ring and the feet of Pope Francis with his Kabbalistic returning to the land that was sold by Sheriff of Maryland Francis Pope back in 15 whatever it was, 16 whatever it was. They love that Kabbalah coming full circle there. When all those traitorous scum puppets, Boehner and Pelosi and Biden and all those scum were following around, holding up the trails of Francis as he took his tour back in 2015, they visited one of the statues of a Jesuit missionary. Who was it? George, you got to know that. Who is the? They all came together and adored this missionary that conquered the indigenous people of the West.
Well, I don't know if George, George jumped in here quick. I'm pretty sure Marquette would have been a Western Jesuit. That's why the school in Wisconsin. Well, I guess more of the Midwest. Jacques Marquette. I'll have to look that over. That's great information, Johnny. It could have been. I'm also thinking it could have been Father Pierre de Schmet. He was part of the colonization of the American West. Father Pierre de Schmet's a big figure. He also ties into the creation of the Mormons as well. It was actually the Jesuit Pierre de Schmet.
C-E-R-A.
Oh, Junipero Serra. Oh, actually, yeah, he has a statue in the. I believe he was a Franciscan, but yeah, he has a statue.
Yes. Eric, you should share that picture. Share that picture of all those papal clowns standing behind Francis, looking up in adoration at Junipero Serra. They will never touch Pierre-Jean de Smet. They will never touch him. He was far too much a kingpin in the founding of America and the opening up of the American West. To focus on de Smet is to open up a massive amount of shocking information. I'll never touch him, but you should pull up because it would.
I got the photo here, Johnny. Yeah, it looks like Pope Francis canonized Junipero Serra in 2015.
There we go.
Here's the photo here.
There we go. He was an absolute monster. He was a typical Spaniard conquistador.
Like, yeah, no, he ties into the cattle farming with Eusebio Kino. With Junipero
or dog farming, as George does.
I'm sorry?
Oh, you back, George? Yeah. I'm going to link this. I'm going to link the Wall Street Journal covered this. I'm going to post this in the chat here.
I'm sorry, I have a confession to make. My dogs are a big fan of Junipero Serra, so they really don't like me talking trash about him.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. They're probably sending information right to their Jesuit provincial from there. You better be careful.
Okay, so anyhow, as I was saying, 12 years ago, I was in Arizona, and I was in Phoenix, and I decided to take a tour of the Capitol building in Phoenix. And it's not nearly as ornate as other Capitol buildings, but one of the statues they have there in Phoenix is of Eusebio Kino. And I remember, when I was on a tour of Phoenix, I had no idea who Kino was at the time. But he's considered to be the unofficial patron saint of Arizona. He's not the official patron saint. He's the unofficial patron saint of Arizona.
Yeah, because he actually just keep going. Yeah, because Kino actually he imported the cattle from Spain, but he brought cattle farming to Arizona. the credit. He's credited in secular historical journals. It's not just the Catholic press that credits him. Like he's the founder of cattle herding and farming.
Also in Germany, they call their cinemas or movie theaters kinos because he's considered to be awesome for some reason. The father of modern movie making. Now, I'm not exactly sure why, but that's another conversation altogether. Now, I need to be going relatively soon, so I don't mean to hijack this show, but could I just mention a couple of things before I go? This is something I sent Johnny over a year ago, maybe closer to 2 years ago. There was a situation comedy on American television from 1977 to 1981 called Soap. It ran on the American broadcast system or channel, and not to be confused with the Australian broadcasting. American Broadcast Corporation, not to be confused with the Australian Broadcast Corporation. This, even though it was not a particularly popular show at the time, in terms of its impact, you could say it was in the same league as the original Star Trek in terms of its cultural relevance. I don't want to say importance, but in terms of, say, cultural damage. Because if you look at the Wikipedia entry to it, now for those who are not familiar with Soap, Eric, we were talking about this before we started streaming. For those who are not familiar with the TV show, just looking at its summary, they said the topics they dealt with were alien abduction, demonic possession, murder, kidnapping, amnesia, cults, organized crime, warfare, communist revolution, a teacher-student relationship, and of course, homosexuality, bisexuality, adultery. So you could call Soap an introduction. You could call it an introduction to Jesuitism 101.
Wait, are you? I had to step away and come back, George. Are you talking about that cheeseball sitcom?
Yes.
Okay, so all of those topics with the spin of you laughing at them. All of those critical topics with the spin of you laughing at them.
Yes. Now, I know off show or on the phone, we've talked about shows like All the Family, and that's a separate conversation altogether. However, I think I need to spend a few minutes talking about who is actually on the show. Now, the main characters in the shows is about two families, the Tates and the Campbells. There were other characters. Probably the lead character was played by Richard Mulligan, who lived from 1932 to 2000. Mulligan was a Catholic seminarian, but he decided not to get ordained. His brother Bob, or Robert Mulligan, went to school at Fordham. One of the other actors who played Danny Dallas was played by Ted Voss. He got his undergrad degree from University of DePaul in Chicago. One of the other actors who played Jody Campbell, one of Bert's sons, was a young but then relatively unknown Billy Crystal. Something we've discussed before. Billy's dad, Jack, went to St. John's College in New York, which is Catholic. Now, Billy Crystal had done a few things prior to Soap. He was on game shows. He was on the Richard Pryor Show, I believe, and the Dean Martin Celebrity Roast. Now, I realize, Eric, I may be alienating you, some of my other audience members, but the Dean Martin Celebrity Roast was one of the staples of the 1970s. And I'll probably have to do a presentation on that, how thoroughly Roman that was. But as I said, Billy Crystal got one of it, made it one of it.
Billy Martin was Catholic too.
Well, yes, of course. Billy Crystal is Jewish. Now, this Soap served as a launching pad for his career. He would later go on to star in the City Slickers, Analyze This, and When Harry Met Sally. Of course, When Harry Met Sally was directed by Rob Reiner, the son of Carl Reiner. And of course, I'll turn the mic over to Johnny. Who exactly is Carl Reiner? Or
well, yeah, real quick. I'll answer that question. I'm going to back up for a second so that everybody understands why this is important and not just trivia. George is painting a vignette, a small picture to give you a broader understanding that it's the Jesuits and not the Jews who control Hollywood. Control of Hollywood is critical because Hollywood bolsters your poisonous matrix false reality. Whenever there's a big lie to be told, Hollywood will strengthen it. Dinosaurs, FBI doing their job, the CIA doing their job, the Russians being bad guys, any of that, any of your reality, Star Wars, Star Trek, any of that will come from Hollywood. Go ahead.
Bigfoot?
Yeah, any of that. Hollywood will bolster your false reality for you.
On the table, Johnny, I know George just mentioned this before we went live. Occasionally, because it is Jesuit Hollywood, because a Jesuit priest wrote the Hollywood production code, Daniel A. Lord S.J. But there was a Star Trek episode where they do this parallel universe where the Roman Empire never fell.
Yeah, my favorite. Bread and Circuses is the name of the episode. Bread and Circuses is the name of the episode. In the episode, there's a cloned planet Earth where Rome never died. You gotta watch the episode. It tells you everything you need to know from sexual deviant Jew Gene Roddenberry, who was nothing more than a puppet. Okay? Tells you, it's my favorite old Star Trek episode because it just had so much truth in it. Not in a warm way. It was still a psyop. It was still a misdirection.
Well, I'm sure that did he go in also like the Colosseum aspect, because that's another really interesting aspect from like modern day like Europe and America to Rome. Is like the ancient Colosseums, would hold like 80,000 people for the bread and circus activities, and like how many massive stadiums are across America today alone with all of the college football stadiums, the NFL stadiums, like the MLB stadiums. Like it's crazy once you start quantifying how. And these are essentially just Roman Colosseums. Like people just got to look at the architecture of Yankee Stadium. There's plaques of the popes outside of Yankee Stadium.
Yeah. Speaking of Billy Martin, who went to his funeral, George? How many Catholic notables went to Billy Martin's funeral?
Boy, you said. Well, I presume his teammates like Yogi Berra, Mickey Mantle, the players, his Whitey Ford. Is probably Ron Guidry, Knight of Columbus, Phil Rizzuto. But are you talking about non-baseball people?
No, honestly, if you want to use that as an opportunity to show people how sports are bread and circuses to this modern, look, we've done all kinds of shows on the past. Just give a quick synopsis. And let me tell you something. Eric corrected me. I used to just say that Vince Lombardi was the Roman Catholic face of national football, but he's absolutely correct. It's a tag team of devout Roman Catholic Chicago George Halas, Windy City George Halas, and Vince Lombardi, Roman Catholic seminarian. How many triple, quadruple Jesuit dipped, almost a Catholic priest himself, Vince Lombardi?
Oh yeah, he was he was also a Papal Knight of Malta. And there's a fourth degree knight. He was a fourth degree Knight of Columbus. There's an actual Knights of Columbus lodge named after Lombardi, which
just like Mike Ditka, right? He was also a Knight of Columbus.
Yeah, Ditka was too. And actually, this ties into this. Let me share my screen here. This ties into like Roman bread and circus, and also ultimately, because bread and circus is to hide Roman political control. Because back in the ancient days, basically that's why they created the Colosseums, to just distract the peasants living in the Roman Empire, because it was a very aristocratic-centered system of government. But I just found this have you guys heard of the Balbo statue?
I have not.
So this statue here on my screen, you can see that there's 4 Roman fascias on the outside of the statue. But this was from ancient Rome, and Mussolini gifted this to the city of Chicago in 1933. For that's 1933 of all years, the year that Roosevelt signed the Emergency Banking Relief Act, which essentially suspended the U.S. Constitution and ushered an emergency rule. And then Hitler signed the Concordat with the Vatican in 1933. But this post here is from ancient Roman times. the times like of the ancient empire, where the Colosseums were up and bread and circuses was going on. But Mussolini gifted this to the city of Chicago, of all places. This was known as the Balbo Monument. But to me, it was incredible. And this 1933 is the same year. I have this up here. I put a bunch of photos on my community page recently of just photos I found showing how America, or just Roman symbolism in America.
How many times did Knights of Malta, Hearst and Luce blow up Mussolini and Hitler as Time Man of the Year and blah, blah, blah? How many times did those guys get blown up by the Roman Catholic propaganda mill?
Oh, all the time. Actually, it was I know Myron Taylor, Roosevelt's personal ambassador to the Vatican. He said that it was a pleasure to see Mussolini bring back the law to a backward people when he conquered Ethiopia, for instance. You're absolutely right. Hearst was blowing Mussolini up. Actually, this is in the book Hearst in Hollywood. They actually had many Hearst and Mussolini met many times. Hearst met Hitler, and Mussolini sent his son to Hollywood to have a private meeting with William Randolph Hearst and all of the elites.
Give me the. By the way, this is the same Hearst. I think it was Hearst that said pump Billy Graham, right? Wasn't it Hearst, George?
Yes, it was in 1980. I guess Hearst owned the LA Times in 1950. And, this reminds me, you're talking about, bread and circuses, but could I just finish making my point about this TV show?
Pause. Just 1 second. I want to do two things. I want to underline that and highlight it. Why would such a malignant puppet of the Roman Catholic Church, William Randolph Hearst, be so helpful to an evangelical Christian minister like Billy Graham? Just think about that, folks. And number two, I want to prop Eric. Eric, what was the quote again from Moonshine Joseph Kennedy on taking it easy on Adolf Hitler?
Oh yeah, that comes from the book, the Catholic Church in Hollywood by Alexander McGregor. You can find the exact quote, but it runs along like this. I'm paraphrasing, but at a director's meeting in Hollywood, because Joseph Kennedy at one point was the chairman of RKO Pictures, he issued a memo saying that we have to stop showing films that depict the Nazis in a negative light.
The chairman of RKO Pictures was Moonshine Joe Kennedy, not a Jew. In the same way that the past president of the Motion Picture Association used to be mega traitor Christopher Dodd, from the Dodd Roman Catholic dynasty. How many Dodds have been in? Daddy Dodd was also a repeat multiple politician insurgent for the Catholic Church. Christopher Dodd was behind both the banking scandal and the real estate scandals. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, him and his homosexual Jewish crony there, Barney Frank, who was gifted the seat after far-left pro-abortion Jesuit Robert Drinan left. So, George, yeah, you can finish. And as you're doing, are you going back to sitcoms and stuff? Just remember, as you're hitting up the sitcom stuff, every once in a while, back up to give the forest through the trees so that the audience can appreciate why. All right, don't let them blow you off as being trivia about a single sitcom. This is an insight. You can apply this insight to any number of different shows. This is just a focus, or movies, Hollywood in general. To give you an idea of who really runs Hollywood, George is giving the example of this twisted, successful sitcom.
Okay, so just to forgive me for repeating myself, I got distracted. Okay, one of the main stars, as I said, Richard Mulligan, was a Catholic seminarian. He decided not to get ordained. He was married 4 times. His brother Robert Mulligan was the director. He did.
George, can I for just a second? I want to underline what you're saying right now. He was a Catholic seminarian, just like Peter Boyle, who was also a huge success in Hollywood and did a lot of time on the Roman Catholic Jewish collaboration. Everybody Loves Raymond. So I'm just telling you, this is proof again of what I just said. What George is telling you, if I can let him do it, I'm sorry, is just giving you insight by a specific example.
Well, of course, and Peter Boyle probably made it. Well, okay, this one of his first semi-starring roles was he played the monster in Young Frankenstein with Gene Wilder, and was directed by
Mel Brooks,
Brooks.
whose partner used to be Carl Reiner. Carl Reiner, the comedian straight man for Mel Brooks, who went to the Father Edmund Walsh School of Foreign Service at Georgetown. Why? Why would a Jewish comedian need to go to the Edmund Walsh School of Foreign Service? Every Jew needs to go to the Edmund Walsh School of Foreign Service at Georgetown.
And as we said, Carl is the father of Rob, probably best known as Meathead on the TV show All in the Family in the 1970s. Although he's made a name for himself as the director. He's done A Few Good Men, Stand By Me. As I said, When Harry Met Sally. This is Spinal Tap.
Wasn't a Reiner behind? I can't remember. My name is Inigo Montoya. What was his name of that? Princess Bride. Wasn't a Reiner behind Princess Bride?
Yes, he directed. Okay,
that. wait. Mandy Patinkin. Right? Inigo Montoya. Not to be confused with Inigo Loyola. Okay? All right?
Ignatius of Loyola?
Right. Mandy Patinkin's character is Loyola.
Oh,
he's chasing the bad guy of 6 fingers.
Wow. I'll have to watch this now.
Yeah, Princess Bride. It is a very successful comedy, fantasy, swashbuckling movie back in the day.
Well, okay, so anyhow, but just getting to the cast members of Soap. So Richard Mulligan was a seminarian who was not ordained. His brother Robert Mulligan went to school at Fordham. Another actor, Ted Weiss, who played Danny Dallas, he got his undergrad degree from DePaul University. Catherine Hellman, who later went on to be the mother in Who's the Boss, she grew up Roman Catholic and went to Catholic schools her entire life. Robert Guillaume, who played the butler Benson and had a spinoff, grew up Roman Catholic, and he attended the University of St. Louis in St. Louis, Missouri. Billy Crystal, as I said, I already talked about him.
Wait. Robert Guillaume was Catholic educated?
Yes.
The black actor. The black actor.
Yes.
See, that's another very important, because the Catholic Church cherishes its black Catholics. Uses them powerfully.
When it's all about, I have the video on my channel. Martin Luther King spoke at Jesuit St. Peter's in 1965 and got an honorary degree. And I think that was a diabolical psyop to convince blacks that the Catholic Church had always been supportive of them, and to hide the fact that the Catholic Church was the most pro-slavery organization in the United States.
How many times have clergy been involved in so-called protests, from that Jesuit Berrigan to SR 71 Teddy Hesburgh, who was on the Civil Rights Committee, who was an actual member of the United States government on the Presidential Civil Rights Committee.
You can see a photo just quickly. There's an iconic photo of Hesburgh with Martin Luther King. If people haven't seen it.
Hey, as a matter of fact, you can also pull up Martin Sheen and Daniel Berrigan.
Oh, Sheen and Berrigan?
Sheen and Berrigan protesting together from the far left of the Catholic.
You had 2 Berrigans. You had Daniel and Philip. Both of them were Jesuits. So, but they were basically interchangeable.
Martin Sheen, who brought his stage name from Fulton J. Sheen, who the militant is shitting himself right now trying to get canonized.
Here's the photo here. Berrigan's on the far right. Martin Sheen's here. Yeah, listen,
you can see Jeremy Irons. Who also, I think, isn't Irons also Roman Catholic? He was in that Jesuit movie. Wasn't that a Scorsese Jesuit movie?
Are you talking about The Mission?
Yeah. Yeah, Irons was in that. He played a Jesuit along with Liam Neeson and Robert De Niro, of course.
Well, actually, I'm pretty. Did you see the clip? Liam Neeson in the Simpsons movie that we know is officially Catholic now. The Vatican pronounced it. But Liam Neeson played a. He was actually like a pedophile Catholic priest in an episode of The Simpsons.
How appropriate.
Yeah, you can find that. People just type in Liam Simpsons. It's I linked the some of the clips are on YouTube. It's in the it's all in the information's in the comment section on the Simpsons video. I like the news broadcast. But it's incredible how involved they were, and just even the book Slavery and Catholicism by William Roscoe Miller shows this. But the Catholic bishops were especially this was epitomized in Bishop John England, the Bishop of South Carolina. And at this time in history, in the 1840s, South Carolina was a huge archdiocese. It also incorporated Georgia, Alabama, and some of the other southern states. But this John England was the most pro-slavery you could ever imagine, and that it's all there in his writings that are on the internet to this day. Google Books has a lot of them out for free. But in the book Slavery and Catholicism by William Roscoe Miller, it's a good book. I'll link it in the chat here. But England is a big Bishop John England's a big figure in that book. But he even mentions are you aware of the Jesuit Francis Healy S.J.? He was a supposed black Jesuit who was the president of Georgetown in the 1860s. And William Roscoe Miller actually shows that he was in reality a white person who the Jesuits disguised as black in the 1930s to use as propaganda, because it was around the 1920s or 1930s where the Catholic Church went all in and trying to convert black people to Catholicism.
And then every once in a while they'll release something that appears to be harmful to themselves, like the story of how Georgetown kept slaves. And they're going to flagellate themselves. But in the meantime, it's far more profitable to them to froth up racial hatred and division by releasing the story that appears to harm themselves. Just like I was thinking about this the other day. Just like the Tuskegee experiments, the much more important, bigger story is that the United States government regularly conducts heinous, unbelievable experiments on innocent American citizens. There are many, many more examples of that. But the one example that gets released is the one where the victims were black, because the racial division overshadows the much more important issue that the United States government, first of all, you have to ask yourself the question: how is the United States government so malignant and hateful of its own citizenry that it's conducting unbelievably evil experiments on innocent citizens? That's because the government doesn't answer to the people, it answers to a malignant foreign power, Rome.
Well, I would just say, Johnny, just one of the founding, all the founders viewed the Roman statesman Cicero as one of their models, and Cicero is actually one of the Jesuits' favorite philosophers. But Cicero was all about how the nobility class is everything, and the common people are essentially useless eater, scum, essentially. The common people have no say in what goes on in a society.
Okay.
And I think that correlates well, and it's an interesting fact that Cicero was the most aristocratic, elitist philosopher out there, and all of the founding fathers viewed this guy as a hero, quote unquote founding fathers. And actually, that's just before he did that. I think the term founding fathers didn't come in until the late 1800s, did it not?
Well, I'm not sure.
To me, that's Jesuitical connotations, because fathers are fathers in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I'll tell you, George, jump in, George. But I just want to underline what Eric is saying, and that is that there's this whole, it's obfuscated. They'll throw in, Blackstone and Aristotle and some other boy buggering Greeks. but the foundation of American government is Roman. And those books that you shared with us recently are just absolutely fantastic sources on that, Eric. It's obfuscated. You started earlier in this very stream. The architecture tells you everything you need to know about American government. The architecture is Roman. Now, whether or not it was adopted by the boy-buggering Greeks is not important. Rome is the power right now. Greece is not a world power. Rome is. Go ahead, George.
When I was saying Greece was historically a Roman province too, so that kind of debunks that Greece controlled Rome.
Right.
Well, okay, but the Hellenistic or Asian Roman Empire predated the Roman Empire, but so Rome got its architectural ideas from the ancient Greeks. Now, by the way, forgive me for chomping at the bit. I just need to make one other point regarding the TV show Soap. And by the way, this would be basically, not to mention this, would be basically like the Japanese not hitting the dry docks or the repair facilities or the aircraft carriers at Pearl Harbor. This is the big ticket item. The upshot about the TV show Soap was it was the first time on American television they featured an open homosexual character played by Billy Crystal. This character was named Jody. Now, as I said, Soap aired in 1977, which was the same year that Harvey Milk was elected to the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco. Milk's cause alarm was like Billy Crystal, he was Jewish. And Billy Crystal was heterosexual, but his character was homosexual. But Milk was the first open homosexual to be elected to public office in America. And he was of a Jewish background. He was a Lithuanian Jew. And something I just said the other day was his campaign manager was Anne Cronenberg, who got her master's degree from the University of San Francisco. So 1977 was a big year for Rome in terms of the LGBT movement. They had, you had Milk, the first open homosexual politician elected to office, and you had Billy Crystal's character, the first open homosexual on television, or at least in American television. And of course, they had to hide behind a Jew. Or hide behind Jews.
Well, that's the blueprint. You know, it's pretty undeniable that they do that. You know, Saul Alinsky, Karl Marx.
Yeah, Eric, you've got great information on Amazon. I just watched. I don't watch television. I don't watch television. When I go to the gym, I'm subjected to the television. And I just saw the other day a commercial. I didn't hear the sound. I found out. I watched. It was an Amazon commercial where they're showing a group of various different couples, and one of the couples was a really in-your-face lesbian, and the one lesbian jumps into the arms of the other lesbian, and they give themselves a full kiss in regular daytime television. They are just constantly pushing the boundaries of sexual impropriety, sexual deviance. So any little kid is watching this. It's an Amazon commercial. Comes on all times of the day. Are you kidding me?
Well, maybe I'll have to look. Maybe this commercial probably aired out after the Jesuits, Seattle University gave $3 million to Amazon in January 2019. And I just with the LGBT, I'm going to link this because it's actually so profound. The Jesuits on the Jesuit Fordham University website, they are reprinting this essay that was called "The Gay Revolutionary" by Michael Swift. The Jesuits are reprinting this on their website, and it's literally a declaration of war against straight people. It literally says, "We will sodomize your sons." Like, it's really like a threat.
Yeah, I'm highly suspect. I imagine that something like that is very similar to the gay pride parades. The homosexual community are pawns, just like the Muslim communities in Europe, just like the illegal alien communities in America. Now, there are vicious, malignant players in those groups, but they are pawns in the same way that Sarah Silverstein is just a despicable human being who does everything possible to mock Jesus Christ, to mock right-wing values. You never know who the hell she was if it weren't for the Roman Catholic machine shining a spotlight on her. The same thing with these extreme examples of homosexuality. You had no idea who they would be if they weren't promoted by the Roman Catholic machine for you to be pissed off at. You understand what I'm saying? They're victims. They're puppets.
Well, absolutely. And I noticed, like, well, in Hollywood, a lot of the people that leave Hollywood and become like quote unquote activists for the people, like Susan Sarandon, are usually Catholic.
Yeah, and also usually involved in extreme sexual deviancy themselves, portraying sexual deviancy on screen, being involved with sexual deviancy off screen. I'm really overwhelmed with how often I have seen that. It's like every single big name, female in particular, but I'm sure the males too. The males, I'm sure, are doing it off screen. I'm just really, it's devastating how often you will see some female that you may have liked in a movie, and you dig up something old about them, and boom, there they are in a very seedy sex scene where you're like, they all do it. They all whore themselves to get where they are. George, you trying to jump in?
Well, something we've discussed before. Excuse me. Is Susan Sarandon, in addition to being Italian Roman Catholic, she went to Catholic University of America, and almost all of her roles, going back almost 50 years, has somehow supported the Roman agenda. Her breakout role was Janis Weiss in the movie Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is like, it's basically a full-on celebration of deviancy and perversion.
Yeah, I swear I've seen her. I've seen her in a movie where she had sex with her own son. I swear it was her.
Oh, okay, that wouldn't surprise me. But she made her acting debut in the 1970 film called Joe, featuring Peter Boyle. So, so we basically have come full circle. So she did that. Really, where she actually did a nude scene in that. And she was also, as I said, in the aforementioned Rocky Horror Picture Show. I mean, just about everything she has done has been a celebration of debauchery, Bull Durham.
Yeah, and then they'll turn around and do some kind of self-righteous Me Too movement or some bullshit like that.
Well, I would say she's doing that, Johnny. Like, I would classify it as Jesuitical social justice. Like, she's been on like all of the big quote unquote progressive YouTube channels, like
perfect.
Jimmy Dore, Secular Talk.
Eric, who has done more harm in sexualizing women than these women that get involved in these sex scenes? Who has done more harm? But they have. Jennifer Lawrence is just the pinnacle of examples. She has absolutely whored herself everywhere across Hollywood, and they have blown her up as a result. And they let out a tiny little bit of truth, and actually they have the nerve to ride that in the wrong direction and admit that supposedly she was in a nude lineup with other teenage girls, nothing more than a nude lineup where a female got an eyeful, but that was it. Meanwhile, it's far worse than that. Far worse than that.
I would agree. I think Hollywood's a combination. I would say the porn industry is something that the Roman Catholic Church controls.
Very much so.
Like, for instance, they found I think his name is Peter Ackwith. This guy founded one of the most this stuff is disgusting, but it's one of the most hardcore pornographic sites on the internet. It's called kink.com. The guy who founded it, Peter Ackworth, was literally a son of a Jesuit priest. The founder, the Georgetown president of Disney, Father O'Donovan. What was the?
William O'Donovan.
No, not William. Oh, what was the?
I'm getting mixed up.
Leo O'Donovan, president of Georgetown, who is also on the board of Disney. While he was the president of Georgetown, he invented the famed pornographic director, Larry Flint. to give a speech at Jesuit Georgetown. And this was even in the Washington Post article. Like when the Jesuit priest was the president of Disney, like they were employing ex-pedophiles at Disney.
Yeah, you must have got a copy of Romans of Mass Destruction. I actually mentioned, I'm pretty sure it was Ackworth. I mentioned Ackworth in Romans of Mass Destruction. I managed to get him in onto the shoulder there, even though it's about serial killers in the 1600s.
Well, that's great to hear. But essentially, it kind of ties into that because, like, I don't recommend people watch it, but it's good to know what's out there. But some of the stuff that's going on in these kink.com videos is absolutely disgusting. I would classify it, as abuse, if not murder, for sure.
Well, yeah,
and I noticed this. The porn is getting like more and more hardcore over time. We see kink.com as in sites like that as evidence of it. So, and this is just like the fall of the Roman Republic was caused by the degradation of morals in society, and ultimately it's the Jesuits trying to fragment the moral structure of. It is
a criminological fact that adult book they don't really rely on these too much anymore because of the internet. And because the Supreme Court has decided that pornography is legal, it's constitutional, it's actually part of the Constitution, protected by the Constitution, pornography is. Adult bookstores are epicenters for crime. Epicenters for crime. It's absolutely causal. Absolutely causal. Ackworth's father was a priest. How was that again? Was he illegitimate? Did he leave the priesthood? It doesn't matter. The same way that you look at somebody like Charlie Sheen, who had an orgiastic sexual deviancy meltdown in Hollywood. The questions that have to be asked are, what were their experiences growing up?
Sheen was a devout Catholic. People aren't aware.
Yeah, his daddy. So was his daddy abusing him as he grew up? And did that turn him into the time bomb? The orgy time bomb that he is today? I think it's highly likely. And there's accusations that Charlie Sheen himself has abused his own children.
Oh, wow. I did look into that in more detail.
Yeah, one of his exes made the accusation and then withdrew it.
Oh, no. Wow. So an ex of his? Oh, she withdrew it, though. Wow.
Yes, an ex of his. I can see her face. I can't tell you her name. An ex of his. You can look it up right now. Charlie Sheen, ex-wife, accuses child abuse. And then she withdrew it.
Wow. Well, I would say politically, like he's used as a the fact that he's used as a disinformation agent by Rome, I think shows that he's read in. But when he went on Alex Jones's show and then just blamed 9/11 on the Jews,
That's it. We would never have seen him. Nothing negative would have happened to him if he didn't go on Alex Jones and say the words Vatican assassins.
Well, actually, yeah, he did. Yeah, he did mention Vatican assassins in that. I think that was the same show. He ultimately, I think he was trying to blame 9/11 on the Jews, but he did mention Vatican.
Nothing negative would have happened to Charlie Sheen if he didn't go on the Bill Hicks show and say the words Vatican assassins.
Denise Richards.
Thank you. Bingo.
Sure.
Denise Richards claimed that Charlie Sheen abused their children. And then didn't press the claim during their legal proceedings and divorce. Absolutely believable. Generational sexual abuse in a devoutly Roman Catholic family. What do I call this? I call it the Opus Dei effect, where Roman Catholicism is a works-based religion that allows you to believe you can commit any heinous act or crime and simply penance it away. Get an indulgence from the Pope. You can buy it away, penance it away, flagellate yourself, mortify the flesh, and you can start all over again.
Well, that's a foundation of Roman Catholic theology, even going back to the Crusades. Innocent III, who's now in the Congress, he said that to the Crusaders, go out and slaughter as many Waldenses, Albigenses, and heretics as possible, then come back to me and I will absolve you of all of your sins, and I'll grant you this indulgence to go to heaven quickly.
Brilliant. Pause.
Excuse me.
Audience, do you know who the Valdenzas and Albigenses were? They were Christians. Nobody knows that the first Crusades were in Europe against Christians. It's all part of the Roman Catholic propaganda machine to pit Christians against those evil Muslims in the Crusades and to get conservatards to actually defend the outrages of the Catholic Church. If the conservatards only knew that the original Crusades were Catholic Crusades against Christians, then the propaganda would be much different.
Oh, excuse me, could I just chime in here for a second? There's a film series, and I believe even a TV series, that has been out for the last few years called The Purge. I know there have been, in terms of movies, there have been 3 or 4 installments of it. But basically, the premise is it starts out in New York City, then it spreads across the U.S. Is one night a year for like 24 hours, you get carte blanche to do whatever you want. You could rape, murder.
That's another Star Trek episode.
Well, yes. Well, this is actually a TV show and a movie where you get a get out of jail free card to commit any sort of crime you want, and the cops won't intervene. So I haven't looked in the series, but that sounds incredibly Jesuitical. That sounds like Opus Dei on the big screen and on the small screen.
You're not referring to The Purge, are you, George?
Yes.
Oh, you are? Okay. I had to take a girlfriend called me on the phone there, so my mic was muted. But yeah, I've seen one of the Purge movies. It absolutely is Jesuitical. Absolutely. They essentially declare it's a national emergency, if you will, which dates back to the Roman Republic. But yeah, you're right. They suspend the rule of law for one day. People can do whatever they want.
I mean, I can do some research on it to see who's involved with the films, but that sounds, as I said, it sounds very Roman. It sounds very Opus Dei-esque. But this is something I mentioned on the broadcast a few days ago with Eric. On this Eric's show, is you're talking about how the rule, if you're part of the elite, the rules don't apply to you. You have a perpetual get out of jail free card. Well, there was a general back during World War II, an American general named Lucius Clay, who lived from 1898 to 1978. He was Dwight Eisenhower's number 2 in command, and he was actually the first overseer of occupied Germany. I forgot his actual title. Well, this month actually marks the 75th anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge, which was launched on December the 16th, 1944. It was officially known as a German counteroffensive in the Ardennes Forest. Okay, I know I'm giving way too many superfluous details. Well, during this operation, the Waffen-SS, the Nazi soldiers, engaged in several massacres, the most famous one of which was in Normandy, in which the Nazis killed dozens of American soldiers for no reason. They weren't trying to escape. They weren't engaged in sabotage. And there are several, after the war, there are trials in Dachau. Now, most people were familiar with Nuremberg. So almost all the architects of these massacres, including Normandy, were punished. Several of them were sentenced to be hanged or sentenced to prison for decades. Well, Clay stepped in and he intervened, and he either preemptively vacated or commuted all their sentences. So nobody got basically punished for these actions. So when Clay was in charge, when Lucius Clay was in charge, he had basically dictatorial powers over occupied Germany. He was basically the king. So
I read the quote. John J. McCloy, who had his position after him, admitted to being a dictator in West Germany.
Yeah, McCloy. Is that Warren Committee McCloy?
Yeah, Warren Commission. Yeah, and he just with George, he succeeded Lucius Clay as the Allied High Commissioner in Germany. But McCloy was very connected to the Catholic Church. I read the quote in the last stream. He actually admitted to that he had a Catholic attitude on things. That was quoted in the New York Times.
A Catholic attitude to punish Luther's homeland.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. When you think about it like that, that becomes clear as day on what his agenda was.
Well, speaking of Clay, now he himself was not actually a Catholic. He was an Episcopalian, which was the American version of the Anglican Church. However, his wife was Roman Catholic. As a matter of fact, in his obituary, they mentioned that his wife had to get dispensation of the Catholic Church in order to marry him.
Episcopalians make the best Catholics, George, whether it's Mark Clark or Ed, Seattle governor, Seattle mayor, pederast, Ed, is it Murray?
Yeah, Ed Murray. Yeah, he went
Ed Murray.
Seminarian, right?
Ed Murray, the far left homosexual Catholic mayor of Seattle, replaced by Jenny Durkin,
Yes.
the far left homosexual mayor of Seattle. See how that works?
There you go. And I would say Mark Clark, as a quote Episcopalian, was a Knight of Malta, and he was going to be Truman's ambassador to the Vatican in 1952. But at this point, there was still somewhat of a Protestant organized assembly in the U.S. that rallied against it.
Yeah, Neil Gorsuch. Neil Gorsuch is a Protestant Episcopalian who was trained by the Jesuits at the same place that Brett Kavanaugh was at Georgetown Prep. Hey, what happened to Georgetown Prep stays at Georgetown Prep.
Yeah, then he said that's been very beneficial for us. Gorsuch is a great example, and even Pete Buttigieg is supposedly now quote Episcopalian.
Buttigieg. Mark, great job, Mark. Pete Buttigieg, whose daddy is a literal Maltese citizen. Daddy came from the island of Malta. Yeah, you were spot on, Mark. Yeah, truth is, real quick, truth is asked, is Rome the beast of Revelation? Absolutely, truth. Rome is the fourth and final beast. Rome is the iron legs in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Rome is the terrible beast in Daniel's dream in Daniel chapter 7. That's Daniel chapter 2 for Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and Daniel's dream is in chapter 7. And all throughout the book of Revelation, Rome. Now, in Revelation 13, this is where I defer to my can I call him my good friend? I think I can. Professor Walter J. Veith, who explains very, very well that the beast of the sea is Rome in Revelation 13, and the beast of the land is my beloved America. America is the sword arm of the Catholic Church. I say that.
It really is. I think there's something to that, Johnny. Just keep going if you want, but I'm going to pull up some of the photos just to highlight that point. Here's the quote battle monument in Baltimore, Maryland, built all the way back in 1815. And you see the monument is actually like a Roman fasces with like a Roman goddess Minerva here with Gregorian eagles. The symbolism is profound. That America is a reincarnation of Rome.
Anybody that discusses this, that talks about how often have you seen, even in the so-called evangelical community, these frauds that say America is Babylon? No, Rome is Babylon. Rome is the great harlot riding the beast of America. Rome is the harlot that rides and directs the beast of America. She has been using America to take the fall from her since the foundation of the country. She commits heinous crimes. A couple that come to mind, both World War II, the imprisoning of Japanese Americans done by Freemason Franklin Roosevelt by executive order. How many people know that Franklin Roosevelt jailed American citizens based on nothing more than their ethnicity by an executive order? Where are all the Catholics? Where is Napolitano? on that as an outrage of tyranny. Stop with Abraham Lincoln. Where are all you Catholic commentators on the unbelievable crime of Freemason Franklin Roosevelt, far left communist Franklin Roosevelt, imprisoning American citizens based on nothing more than their ethnicity by executive order? Another example are the so-called atomic bombs. That's the beast of America acting on behalf of Rome, committing crimes for Rome, and only America takes the fall. Rome gets the pass.
Well, so here's an example here, Johnny. Just no, all those examples you mentioned were great, and people are aware the Catholic hierarchy was very close to Roosevelt throughout his entire New Deal reforms, and throughout his entire 4-term presidency, they were very close to Roosevelt. Pacelli toured, I think in 1936, Eugenio Pacelli stayed at Roosevelt's mansion.
And who was it? Was it the Bradys or the Kennedys that facilitated that secret meeting?
The Bradys, yes. And Pacelli stayed at the Innisfada mansion also, which Genevieve Brady later gifted to the Jesuits.
Yeah, so secretly, nobody knows that Rome is pulling the strings on Roosevelt. And meanwhile, he's having secret meetings when? Before World War II.
Well, he was completely, well, and a Knight of Malta, actually, people aren't aware, got Roosevelt elected, James Aloysius Farley. He was the head of the Democratic Party at the time when Roosevelt got elected, and he's known as like Roosevelt's political kingmaker. This symbolism here, though, is profound. Like you see, here's a Roman eagle holding fasces during right. Grover Cleveland was a Roman fraud during his whole presidency. He appointed lay Jesuit Edward Douglas White to the Supreme Court, for instance. You see, these principles, these are essentially fascism roots in the Roman Empire. People don't know the Roman Empire and the Roman Republic claimed that they had the power of absolute life and death over their citizens.
Eric, if you can, grab a picture of Dirty Wars Jorge and speaking to Congress, and in it you'll be able to see here's the Jesuit Pope standing between two fasces, two fasci. And on the outside of that, you'll see a Roman aquila, which is the Roman eagle on a battle staff that is planted on conquered ground.
Oh, that's the house ceremonial mace. That they had that out when he.
No, that's different.
Oh,
that's different. It's the Roman aquila. Is a Roman eagle on a staff. I'm pretty sure it's separate and unique to the congressional mace. I'm pretty sure it's separate.
Here's the photos I got up here.
And he'll be standing, Dirty Wars Francis will be standing. On either side, you've got the Democrat Roman Catholic Joe Biden, and you've got the Jesuit-trained phony reptilian, the demon rat on the left, and the phony reptilian on the right, John Boehner.
Well, I have a video on my channel of John Boehner congratulating Georgetown University on their 200th year anniversary. For the anniversary of the 200th year of their bicentennial charter. And John Boehner even says that after the War of 1812, the U.S. government was going to move their temporary headquarters to Jesuit Georgetown. For instance, he's like, "Oh, I've valued my Jesuit schooling."
Real quick, you've got the picture there. That picture right there, where your cursor's on, that is the aquila. That's separate from the mace. That's the aquila. It's a Roman eagle on a staff, and they parade that around in the same way that the Roman army did, and it gets planted on conquered ground.
This is a fasces here. It appears like the middle section.
Yes, the staff itself is a fasces, and on top of the fasces is a Roman eagle, and everything all together is called the aquila.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that, and actually, I have the video on my channel. Even actually, here's a more zoomed out one where you can see both fasces. It's amazing. I have Chuck Schumer, a quote unquote Jew. Chuck Schumer, was essentially slobbering. Oh, I got some spam coming up here. He was literally saying, "Oh, I was so excited to see the Pope when he came in. Oh, I got to see him. And we shook my hands. It was the most exhilarating experience of my life."
Yeah, he knows. He knows where source. And real quick, truth is talking about the mark. As far as I'm concerned, truth, the mark of the beast on the right hand of the forehead, as far as I'm concerned, that is nothing more than showing with your actions. In the Bible, your right hand is indicative of acting according to your heart, and the forehead is a metaphor for what you're thinking. The mark of the beast on the forehead and or the right hand is to think or act in a way that pleases Rome. So it's nothing specific to me. That's just my interpretation. Is to think or act. This is how non-Catholics like Chuck Schumer can get empowered. By being a good gatekeeper, by being a good traitor, by covering up crime. When you show that you are in, you'll do whatever is necessary to help the Roman agenda. That is the mark of the beast. That is
like Mark Zuckerberg went to see the Pope in 2016, shortly after Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, went to see the Pope. Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, went to see the Pope. All like in succession, all bowing down to the Roman agenda you're speaking of.
That's why we have no power. That's why we have no coverage. And yet other people in so-called alternative media who get you wrapped up in Nephilim and Mayan calendars like Tom Horn and 2012, all the date setting that Tom Horn did, and he still has credibility. How is that possible? How is that possible? He should have.
You're not talking about Harold Camping, are you?
Say again, George.
You're not talking about Harold Camping, are you?
No, but you can. Who is the messianic? Who is the messianic Jew that did the blood moons and all that?
Well, I'm
pretty sure I know Tom Horn wrote a book on like the supposed blood moon prophecy. I'm pretty sure that's one of the.
Yeah, well, he did the prophecy of the popes. He was handed the prophecy of the popes by a Jesuit. I'm absolutely sure of it. He was handed the prophecy of the popes by a Jesuit.
Well, no, again, I heard this from an old broadcast you did. I know Tom Horn admitted to studying with Jesuits in the Vatican.
Yeah, look, anybody that gets a tour of the Jesuit observatory there at Public University of Arizona on Mount Graham, the holy ground that was stolen from the Apache. Anybody that gets a tour of the Lucifer telescope by the Jesuits is clearly cleared by the Jesuits. Khan, isn't that his name? The Messianic Jew, Kahn?
Yes.
That did the blood moon silliness. All a distraction. All a distraction.
Well, I would say David Icke. I would classify David Icke as a Jesuit propagandist.
Yes.
Reptilian distraction. And ultimately, I'd say he diverts into this mindless Jew bashing as well, which ties into Jesuit.
Yes, the perfect syncretistic mixing of truth and stupid to get you distracted. Hook you with truth and then distract you with stupid.
Yeah, because according to David Icke, there's Zionist, Jewish, shape-shifting reptilians.
Yes.
The reptilians are actually Jewish. They're not just like...
Yeah. Yes, they've been circumcised. The reptilians have been circumcised.
Oh, it's crazy the amount of propaganda, and it's just to block out the simple fact. Like you see photos like this, nothing has changed. You know, if you went back to the court of Louis XIV in France, this is what you would see when the Pope visited. You know, nothing's changed from like the Middle Ages with all the temporal rulers, because like the popes claim that like the Pope is the sun, and the temporal rulers of the allegory was the Pope is the sun, the Roman Emperor is the moon. And so it's like the Roman Emperor is symbolic of the temporal authorities. So temporal authorities like the moon derive their light from the sun, the Pope. So it's been like this for thousands of years, and you just see when you see photos like this, like nothing has changed. Like even the Jesuit Thomas Reese on my channel has a quote where he says the Vatican has been. His exact quote was like the Vatican has been dealing with kings, rulers, and presidents and princes for over 2,000 years. It's just business as usual. All that disinformation, though, from Icke and Tom Horton are just to hide that simple, fact that nothing has changed. How many just before I just say, how many of the leaders of the world today have gone to kiss the ring to see Pope Francis? Putin went to see him, kiss the ring. Netanyahu went to kiss the ring. Trump. One of the first things Trump did, Trump went to kiss the ring at the Vatican only 6 months into his first term. Paul Biya, the Jesuit-trained dictator of Cameroon, got his blessing by Pope Francis. Theresa May, I think, went to the Vatican. Obviously, Tony Blair, when he was Prime Minister of Britain, went to the Vatican. All of the leaders of the world go to see Pope. Angela Merkel, go down the list. They all go kiss the ring.
Yeah, Theresa May, another one, another dipshit puppet.
And I would say that Theresa May knows about the Roman Catholic conspiracy. Just like I know, there was an article from The Economist in 2010 where Theresa May was quoted saying that the EU was like a Vatican concocted conspiracy. But she did nothing to resist the Vatican while she was prime minister. She did nothing.
Look at the progression. Look at the progression. Tony Blair waited until after he left office to let everybody know that he was an agent of the Catholic Church under the bullshit ruse of, you know what, let me go ahead and convert. I never thought about it until after I left, but let me go ahead and convert. What a bunch of bullshit. That piece of shit was an agent for the Catholic Church. How is it possible that leftist labor Tony Blair could jump on the war on terror with that other dipshit George Bush? Because they all answer to the same source. They all answer to the same power. In the same way that you have supposedly leftist Democrat Barack Obama and right-wing George Bush and right-wing Donald Trump, nothing changes in between. The Democrats and the demon rats and reptilicans, nothing changes. How is that possible? And when they're supposedly two totally different political parties, it's because they all answer to the same power source. Today,
the Democrats have been Catholic. They've been Catholic since the 1850s. Like the first Catholic Supreme Court Justice, William Taney, was Catholic. This goes way, way back to the mid 1800s. I mean to cut you out there. Keep going.
Sure. No, I just wanted to. And what's the name of that current papist now that is an open Roman Catholic there in England?
Oh, Johnson.
Yeah, he won the re-election actually.
Oh, good. I was worried. The Catholic Church would lose some power and control if he didn't win the election.
And of course, he was born in America. He was born in New York City.
Perfect. Now, in the same way that the Taoiseach, or whatever you call the prime minister in Ireland, there, the homosexual married to another man who ushered in abortion in Ireland. What an outrage! He with his East Indian father and Irish Roman Catholic mother. How are these people representing? They're not. They don't have to. In fact, it's preferable that they have no ties to their citizenry, so that when they do great harm to their citizenry, they don't have that empathy for them.
Actually, I'll pull up the photo of Pope Francis meeting Leo Vardaker. Another example. Like Pope Francis, he has met like every single.
Oh, while you're at it, pull up the pictures of Vardaker during the St. Patrick's Day parade, meeting Dolan and them hanging over that poor little altar boy and being over there with Jeffrey Epstein's pal Andrew Cuomo and the conservative Republican Peter King.
Yeah, I'll pull that up here. Just Leo Vardaker, New York, Dolan. Dolan. People are aware. The Associated Press covered this. Dolan spent like $10 million to cover up sex abuse allegations.
Yeah, and then you can pull up some of the mansions that these cardinals and bishops live in while you're at it. Yeah,
that's the one you're speaking about here, Johnny. Yeah, look at Dolan's laughing it up. Look, he's.
There's not a single picture where that pedophile piece of shit is laughing. You got Jeffrey Epstein's good buddy Andrew Cuomo front and center. You got conservative Republican Pete King, who has no problem marching with all these guys.
Is he supposedly a Protestant, Pete King? Like, is he like a?
No.
Is he openly Catholic?
He's openly Catholic. You bet.
Oh, he is openly. Okay, makes sense that he's here then.
I'm pretty sure de Blasio was there somewhere too.
Okay, Johnny, can I just mention something, not to change gears? I guess this came up a day or two ago where I guess President Trump was in Michigan and he was talking trash about the late Representative John Dingell and his wife, Debbie.
Pause. I don't know if this is the same little boy, But Eric is scrolling through picture after picture, and repeatedly he's hanging on a little. No, it's a different.
Right here. Yeah, look at this. Yeah, he's got his arm right. Yeah, this guy's known to like covered up sex.
Would you feel comfortable with your little boy? Catholicism is a disease. It is a disease. Would you put your little boy in the grasp of someone like Dolan and in the grasp of an open homosexual who married another man? Are you fucking kidding me? Roman Catholicism is a disease. When these little boys get raped and sodomized, where do the Catholic parents go? Do they go to the cops? No. Do they go to the prosecutor? No. Do they go to the social worker? No. They go to the Catholic clergy and say, Bishop so-and-so, Father so-and-so sodomized a little boy. Are you fucking kidding me? Let anybody, no less a priest, rape my little boy. Then I'd be in jail. I would be in jail. And that priest may not even be alive. Certainly would be beat within an inch of his life. Are you kidding me? Catholicism is a fucking disease. Pardon my language.
Okay, absolutely. No, I feel like I would probably have the same reaction. Like if cause I can't even imagine something like that happening to.
Again and again.
But like the disease, Johnny, spreads to the cat. And we covered the story of the Buffalo police department, but the infectious disease spreads into law enforcement. So when people even do go to the cops, nothing happens. And you can see here the quote, Dolan says that the spiritual home of the New York Police Department is St. Patrick's Cathedral. Yeah,
the Knights of Columbus are really big on that. And that opening scene, although the movie's spotlight is propaganda about how so-called journalists, the Jesuit-trained journalists at the Boston Globe do their jobs. They don't. That's the propaganda. But the opening scene of that movie is it's giving me a chill to remember it. It's absolutely spot on. And it's not because the Catholic Church owns Boston. It's because the Catholic Church owns all the big cities where you've got I don't remember the bishop at the time. I think it was like Mendoza, is a Hispanic name, who's actually screening the victim's mother for the friggin' cops. He's at the police station screening the victim's mother for the cops and the prosecutor. The opening scene in that movie is just absolutely spot on for Spotlight.
No, there's some very spot on scenes. I know everyone should watch it if they haven't seen it. People that are here watching our broadcast, it's one of the few Hollywood movies I do recommend people watch. And there's that one scene where Mitchell Garabedian's character says that the Roman Catholic, he says, I'm an experienced individual, and I realize the Roman Catholic Church controls everything. And then he stresses everything. He repeats it.
Yep.
And it's there's some good scenes like that.
Centuries, Mr. Resendez.
Yeah, absolutely. The church thinks in centuries. And Johnny, here's this photo here. So I found this on the internet. Someone put ancient Roman Chicago. But look at this. This is literally the Roman Empire resurrected in one of America's biggest cities. What is Chicago, the third biggest city in America? Huge, 10 million people, counting the metropolitan area. You see literally the SPQC. This is a symbol of the ancient Roman Empire with the Gregorian eagle and reef here. This is a Roman centurion and fasces, and this is on the criminal courthouse. You can see, I looked up a photo of this whole courthouse, and there's literally 100 of these Roman centurions that outlay on the outside of the building.
This is proof that you will never, ever, ever receive justice as long as the current system is enacted. This is why I would say, to Rothschild and that's cute, Rothschild in the chat. Don't get wrapped up about birth certificates and social security numbers. Yes, they absolutely plug you into the machine. And you know what? There is no easy way. This is why I tell people you will never get off grid. Listen to me. Don't shit yourself over trying to get off grid. If they want you, they will find you. The problem is the entire system. Don't spend time trying to fight them on their grounds, giving Eric John Phelps $2, $3, $4, $5 grand to go to court and win. You will never win in court. Don't try to go off grid. Don't spend tens of thousands of dollars to build a bomb shelter and to not have electricity and not have internet, not have a cell phone. They own it all. And if they want you, they will come find you. Ruby Rich, if they want you, they will find you. They will kill you. The problem is the system. And I think that the movie Spotlight shows just how rotten, just how much a house of cards the system is right here and right now. The problem is going to be solved from within. It's going to start from within. You on the outside will never have the power to do them any harm. You will. That's why all these false flags are so easy to identify. You got that clown up in Canada that found an old 1830 lever action rifle and shot it 3 times in the parking lot. And we're supposed to shit ourselves that he was a terrorist. He was going to threaten the politicians there. In no way, shape, or form were they ever threatened. It was clearly a false flag.
Well, absolutely, and they use that. Canada gun rights are just getting eviscerated. They're already extremely decimated. Yeah,
none of that
federal registry in place, but Trudeau recently had his crown speech, wants to ban guns. But
none of that shit will ever cause them harm. You, on your level, will never be a threat to the machine. They will crush you in a heartbeat. However, it is rotten to the core. Many, many, many of these players on the inside hate themselves. They hate the fact that they have been suckered in to this machine. They've been corrupted. They've been compromised. They hate themselves. They're waiting for the right moment, just the way the Magnificent Seven ended. They're waiting for the right moment to pick up their pitchfork and run out into the streets and strike back. That's why Spotlight was so effective, even though it was propaganda, because they hate themselves and hate the machine, and they want very much to strike back at the great harlot. They're dying for the opportunity. They're just waiting for that first little crack in the dam, in the levee, to start spurting out water. And then it's going to be followed by other cracks, and before you know it.
Well, I think the pedophilia, I think we're starting to see, they're doing a good job of sealing the cracks as it is. They're getting a lot of Jesuit-trained attorney generals to handle the case, and there's been not many indictments, but I think eventually though this could
Jew in Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah, Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, Lisa Madigan in Illinois. But I think eventually though this sex abuse crisis could spiral out of control, where it becomes they can't contain the information that's coming out. And
yet, you're absolutely right. They saw this coming. Whatever they have, the predictive technology that they have stolen, they're to use their language, modus operandi, is to predict a crisis and jump in front of it and steer it. They did it with Flat Earth. They're doing it with the pedophilia. They put their agents in front of the issue so that you're getting the truth, and then it's being twisted and steered in the wrong direction. For the pedophilia, you're getting the psyop that justice is actually taking place, that it really is only 6%. What's the name of that expert? Something Thomas Aquinas.
Was Aquinas Richard? Oh, Aquinas Scythe. What was it?
Yeah, Scythe. Is it Scythe?
Yeah, Richard
Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas, Scythe, something like that.
Yeah, it's got a ridiculous name.
Yeah, ridiculous name. It's only 6%, and look, when you look at it, it's 6% of the pot. Bullshit, absolute bullshit. If you require every single adult to deny their nature and be celibate for the rest of their lives, you're going to have the vast majority with serious sexual dysfunction. They're going to carry out their sexual dysfunction in an unhealthy way. It is guaranteed. 6% is a bullshit number.
I would say I've seen Catholic Bill O'Reilly when he was on Fox News. He repeatedly stressed that he said, "Oh, don't worry, God. There's less percentage of Catholic pedophiles in the clergy than the general population." He kept saying that over and over again, and hammering. I don't know where he was getting his statistics from.
And he just made it up. But he's a good Roman Catholic himself, and he knows who has empowered him, even though he's an arch misogynist himself. That's those sins were overlooked until it came time to kick him to the curb, and then finally it came time to kick O'Reilly to the curb, and he served his purpose, and he's had a full life, and he'll continue to get jobs. He will not be in danger of not being able to pay his bills.
Well, he'll probably Obama recently is charging $300K per speech.
Yeah, just as Bill Clinton does, just as Hillary Clinton does. George, they no matter how supposedly disgraced, Harvey Weinstein will go on a speech circuit tour. No matter how disgraced they are, there will be no real justice. They will continue to prosper.
Okay, so can I just throw in a couple of things? You were mentioning Peter King a few minutes ago. He went to St. Francis College for his undergrad degree in Brooklyn, and he went to Notre Dame for his law school. Now, there's a flap that just came up with the president the other day, Donald Trump, and he was in Michigan recently. I started to talk about this, but I guess we got distracted. He was talking, Trump was talking in the same district where Debbie Dingell is now a representative. She's the widow of the late John Dingell. John Dingell died earlier this year, having served in the U.S. Congress for about 60 years, from 1950.
Wait, did you just say that she is the representative now?
Yes, she took a seat.
Are you frigging kidding me? Because that dribbling, drooling Roman Catholic piece of shit didn't hold that seat long enough. Are you frigging kidding me? This fits right into the feudalism. Elections are an absolute joke, and they are controlled by Rome. I've got to add Dingell to the family of Roman Catholic feudalists who own so-called elections. Murkowski, Dingell, Dodd, Cuomo, Boggs, on and on and on and on. Fitzpatrick. Are you kidding me? That guy, that piece of shit, that leftist communist Catholic set a record. They had to carry him out. Murtha, Teddy Kennedy, Teddy take me for a ride Kennedy, John Murtha, Byrd in West Virginia, although he wasn't an open Catholic. These criminals drool on themselves in their seat. They have no mental faculties. And the only way they leave their seat is in a pine fucking box, George. And when they leave their seat, they get a relative to jump into the seat. Are you fucking kidding me? Sorry for my language.
That'll be Nancy Pelosi. She's literally like I think I mentioned this earlier on the show. Jump in, George. I noticed this with super Catholic Pelosi when she's speaking recently. She can barely hold a sentence together. It's like she's.
Well, I mean, maybe she needs to get her.
Did you see that? Did you see the video? I know the militants pressing that, George and Eric, where she gets offended because some idiot, some puppet said, "Do you hate Donald Trump? I am a good Catholic. I do not hate anyone." Did you see that?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, it's so difficult. It's no, she doesn't hate him. It's her buddy. They're partners in a big show in Jesuit theater.
So, anyhow, okay, I need to address a couple of things, but it gets even better or worse with John Dingell. He was not dipped. He was not double dipped. He was triple dipped. He went to Georgetown Preparatory School, went to Georgetown for his undergrad degree, and he went to Georgetown for his law degree. Ding, ding, ding. So of course,
George, do you have how many years? How many years? And he was a congressman, right? How many years?
Like 57 or 58.
57. Congress. How many times does a representative go for re-election, George?
Well, so you're talking roughly 30 times, like 28 times. Whatever.
Once every 2 years, a congresswoman, a representative is re-elected. This Catholic communist piece of shit was reelected, 32, 33, 34 friggin', are you kidding me? Tell me that's the democratic process.
Well, Patrick Leahy is I think he's the current longest, he's a senator. Patrick Leahy is the longest reigning U.S. senator. He's a devout Catholic trained at Georgetown in Vermont. He's been, quote, elected. I think he's now going on 30 years. And think about Cameroon, and Cameroon's a supposed, quote, democracy. Paul Biya, educated by Jesuits at the Lycée Le Grand, he's been the, quote, democratic leader of Cameroon for 40 years now. 40 years. And Paul Biya is openly trained by Jesuits. Yeah. And democracy is the sham. Just studying the Roman Republic, I just found there were elections also back in the ancient Roman Republic that were basically just sham elections as well.
Good job. I'm sorry, Eric. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm trying to grab Mark's. Mark, God bless you. His comment there. Add Governor Moonbeam Brown and his family of Roman Catholic feudalist control. Repeat. Oh, another one. Kathleen Sebelius. that harpy monster in Kansas never met a third trimester abortionist she did not love. An absolute monster. She was Governor S in Kansas, and her daddy was governor in Illinois, I think.
Ohio.
Cool.
Ohio.
Well, this ties in a name we haven't mentioned, I think, is Landrew. They basically have Louisiana politics under control. The Landrews. You got the father was a senator and a congressman, and Mitch Landrew was the recent mayor of New Orleans, and Mary Landrew is in the House. All of them are trained by Jesuits.
What are the names we've got so far of these Roman Catholic dynasties? The Browns, California, the Dingles, Sebelius, Landrew, Boggs, Dodd, Kumo, Murkowski, Kennedy. What a joke elections are.
And of course,
Quigley.
Quigley.
The Trudeau.
Quigley and the current House member from Illinois.
Go outside of America. Trudeau. In France. The so-called anti-immigration clowns, Daddy and his daughter, eye patch. Who's the clown with the eye patch in France?
Not Macron. Not Macron.
Yeah, think of the right wing. Yeah, because Macron is trained by Jesuits. Macron has a deep tie to the nobility. What was the name? I'm gonna look up. What was the guy in France? I haven't heard this guy that you're mentioning, Johnny. Is he the current head of the right wing party?
Hold on.
I've studied basically more French politics, but I'm not adept on it. France is essentially in a state of martial law under Jesuit-trained Macron. He has French soldiers.
Le Pen. Jean-Marie Le Pen and his daughter, Marine Le Pen. If you are pissed off at being immersed in immigrants in France, who do you go to? You go to the Roman Catholic controlled opposition of the Le Pen family, who blame Jews.
Well, actually, I know the Yellow Vest movement has been heavily co-opted by the Catholic Church because this turned into a lot of Jew bashing at the Yellow Vest societies, and I've seen footage of Yellow Vesters inside a Catholic church getting blessing by the Catholic priest. So it's sad to say. France has a long history of anti-Semitism. That's where the Dreyfus affair took place.
You have to. If you've got a country that is destroyed by Catholicism, you got to blame somebody. You got to blame a scapegoat. William in the chat says the Bushes count. Good for you. The Bushes absolutely count because Skull and Bones is secretly owned by the Catholic Church, and of course you've got Jeb Bush, who is an open Roman Catholic and Knight of Columbus.
Oh, absolutely. And they're both named after the Jesuit-trained banker George Herbert Walker.
Yes.
And, the Bush beer dynasty is Catholic. Bush, B-U-S-C-H. Yeah, I know Augustus Bush IV was trained by Jesuits at St. Louis University. And all the Bush beer family is Catholic.
Excellent. Yeah, Jeremy's there reminding me. I hate to do this, Jeremy, because I don't want to get my friends. I have two friends in the Adventist in the House of Adventism, and that's one good friend on Facebook, and our resident beloved Professor Walter Veit. But you're absolutely right. There is a Sunday law in Poland. There is a blue law. And it is believable that you can push a blue law. Now, the machine loves to froth up Adventists over this crazy idea that you will be forced to worship on Sunday. That will never happen. However, it is plausible that there will be a return or resurgence of blue laws that force closing of shops and stores on Sunday. That's possible. But, man, as far as symptoms go, that's just a symptom. Don't get all crazy about it. There's many, many more things to worry about.
Oh, okay. If I could mention one other name, there is who was he was in the Clinton administration and in the Obama from California.
Panetta?
Panetta, yes, Leon Panetta. His son Jimmy is in the California state legislature.
Oh wow! But is he educated by Jesuits like Leon Panetta?
I'm sorry, Jimmy Panetta is actually a California representative, or he's in the in the U.S. House of Representatives from California. So the son of Leon.
Excellent. And that's Panetta who did the Gates routine. Jesuit trained Robert Gates, who was both Secretary of War and Director of the Catholic Intelligence Agency. Panchetta, who was a nobody congressman, was chosen by Jesuit-trained Bill Clinton to be his chief of staff. He was chairman of the Office of Management and Budget, which is very, very powerful. And he was resuscitated Barack Obama's teleprompter. Barack Obama's Jesuit-trained teleprompter told him to resuscitate Panchetta to become both his Secretary of War and the Director of the Catholic Intelligence Agency.
People anywhere, I think we brought up the photo. You can see a photo of Leon Panetta and Bill Clinton at the Vatican together back in the 90s. I think we've shown that on the previous. Maybe I'll see if I can pull that up here. George, did Panetta's son also go to Jesuit Santa Clara?
Yes. I'm sorry. That was and yes. How can I forget this? We're talking about Debbie Dingle, the wife or the widow of late John Dingle, and of course, get this. She went to law school at Georgetown.
Yeah, perfect. I'm going to run through that list that we got so far. Anybody else, Eric, George, anybody in the chat? So come up with these family names that prove that democracy, particularly in America, but everywhere around the world, is a joke, is a Roman Catholic controlled joke. So we got the Brown family, Moonbeam Brown and his daddy in California, Dingle and his wife, Sebelius, Kansas, and what did we say? Was it Ohio? Kansas and Ohio. Landrew, Boggs, Dodd, Cuomo, Murkowski, Kennedy, Quigley, Panetta, Trudeau in Canada, Le Pen in France. These Roman Catholic far left, all of them, far left families.
Oh, in America, you got Ricketts.
Ricketts as power players behind the scenes. Yeah, Jeremy, we'll throw the Bushes in there.
The current son is the governor in Nebraska. Pete Ricketts, and the other, he's a Knight of Columbus, Knight of the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre. And actually, I don't know if you caught this point. I just mentioned in ancient Rome, Johnny, the businessmen were known as the equestrians. So you can see the Roman Empire never really fell.
Yes.
So the ancient Roman Empire, their head of their Senate was called the Curia, just like how today in the Roman Catholic Church, the Curia is the headquarters.
And equestrian, which would also become a military order in the Catholic Church, is a horseman, which can also be defined as cavalry in the military. It is a military assault from the Catholic Church.
Oh, actually, that's a great realization. Modern cavalry systems originate from Rome, and I just realized there's so much of our modern government. Like I found, for instance, the power of governments to declare a national emergency dates back to the Roman Republic. It was called the Senate Consultus Ultimum, and internal emergencies were called tumultus. And so the whole it's just very interesting. But just with the other side, just continuing. If you want to keep going with the Catholic families, I'd say the other son of the Ricketts is the chairman of the Republican Party Finance Committee. He went to Jesuit Loyola Chicago, and the father Ricketts was educated at Jesuit Creighton, and he was the founder of TD Ameritrade. And now there's the Ricketts Center at Jesuit Creighton's Business School. For instance, and this Joe Ricketts recently built the Jesuits a 1,000+ acre retreat house.
Yeah, if we're gonna do players behind the scenes, we could also include the Brady family as well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I'd say here in Canada, our Brady counterparts are called the Desmarais. They own the Canada Power Corporation, I'll see if I can link the article. I have an article on my Eric Bowman 77 archive.org account written by the National Post called the Desmarais Dynasty. But their property in Quebec is the size of Manhattan, and they have private Catholic chapels on their property. Like super devout Roman Catholic, former King of Spain, King Juan Carlos comes to the Desmarais mansion every summer in Quebec here.
I don't know if you can consider. I don't know if you can consider Conrad Black generational, but he absolutely is a behind-the-scenes player for the Catholic Church in Canada and a phony right winger too.
Oh, a huge Conrad Black's thought is like right-wing thought in Canada. He owns like the conservative media here in Canada. Yeah, he's a papal knight of Saint Gregory the Great, and he's a devout Catholic now. He's even wrote columns on like why he's why he switched from. I think he was Anglican before. Like he openly
even better. And what's the information that you got that he received his knighthood in his own private chapel that he had made special?
Yes, that comes right from his autobiography. I think it's self-titled "Life of Conrad Black." In that chapel, it was the Archbishop of New York. I forget his first, William McCarter, who knighted him. And this chapel was, or this house of Conrad Black was in Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book log, where you can see on Conrad Black's entry on the Black Book, it's not scratched out. You can see 2 entries for Toronto under Conrad Black with this 416 area code. So,
wow.
And then Conrad Black, he had like a private chapel set up in his house. And the Catholic elite have been doing this forever. Another big name is Doheny. Out on the West Coast, he founded the Pan American Oil Company. He was the biggest oil magnate, robber baron in Western America. He was a papal knight of the Holy Equestrian Order of the Sepulchre, and Doheny needs to be. I think he should be brought up in the discussion.
I think the papists pronounce it sepulcher. I think
because actually Doheny I remember this. Doheny was made the knight of the sepulchre in his private chapel, just like Conrad Black. Doheny had special privileges from the Archbishop of New York, Archbishop of LA, McIntyre, to give like private Catholic mass in his own house.
Excellent. You know, these papists with their own private chapels and all of this money, these are the ones that really worry me the most. The right wingers who buy their own chapel, these are the ones that I think have committed some of the most heinous crimes. They go out and they do the really, really, really evil stuff, and then they flip a switch, and then they assuage their conscience by being public conservatives and moralists, and they go to their own chapel and they say 666 Hail Marys. Meanwhile, these are the ones that are really committing the worst of the crimes, I think.
Well, I would agree. George W. Bush had his big ranch.
The Knights of Hubertus and their ranches all around, to include Bohemian Grove and the Bohemian Club in San Francisco, are the worst. George, you trying to jump in?
Oh yes, don't forget Mel.
I can't help but still love Mel, even though he has been destroyed his own marriage with his almost certain adulteries and constant parties and so forth. I mean, they've got pictures of him in public with these women hanging all over him, and I feel bad for the guy because he basically kind of imploded, and his wife was a central part of everything in him, including his business and his managing, and to the point where he had to bring her back in a business sense because he was nothing without her. So he fought with his dick. His dick encouraged him to implode. He destroyed his marriage, and it ruined him.
Do you think I wonder just because he was used? I don't know if he was used because I know his father is a devout Catholic and a huge Jew ideologue. But Mel Gibson, I think he had the famous quote saying "the fucking Jews." Pardon my language.
Yes.
He said it's the fucking Jews, and he on numerous times I think he's blown up kind of irrational.
Yes, he did have more than one anti-Semitic meltdown, And I do think that he has been used and continues to be used as a conservative Catholic in the same way that the militants audience continues to be used. I don't have, I'm just my guess. My sense is that he is not a read-in participant in the Roman Jesuit theater, that he truly believes what he preaches, even though he doesn't live it. And so he's a puppet and a pawn. And for that, I feel bad for the guy. I'd love to get him and his friend Downey Jr. on our team. I really would. I would love to have them.
Well, I wonder if just because all these guys have to know that everyone in Hollywood bows down to the Catholic Church, the Catholic hierarchy. So I'm sure they're looking for people out there who are talking about, that.
I'll tell you, I really do believe that particularly somebody like Downey Jr., they have a lot of money and a lot of time on their hands. I know that many people in Hollywood have done their own digging and might even have come across some of our material, may or may not. I know that prominent people have come across our material. What pisses me off is they're all cowards about it. No one has popped up anywhere to help us out, to give us a little love. Nobody. They're too cowardly. They know that as soon as they go into the truth, touch the truth, that's a third wire, and all of their fame and fortune is in.
Well, actually, John, I found this really interesting quote from John Lennon. I want to find exactly the date he said this quote. I've seen it on multiple sites. I quoted this from a site, timeout.com. But John Lennon, as a celebrity, he said, at the height of his fame, he said, "Today, America is the Roman Empire, and New York is Rome itself." And he died not too long after saying this, I think. But you got to show a little bit of. I know. I think the point being that John Lennon's statements like that, saying the people in Hollywood know the truth. I think that's symbolized there in John Lennon's quote. John Lennon is an archetypal celebrity.
Why he was killed? You bet. Why he was killed? He is far more useful to them dead than alive. Yeah, Karen, another good example. Tim Allen, conservative Catholic, used for his ideology to spin people up and point them in the wrong direction. But a very appealing story. Same thing with Downey Jr. Very appealing story of hitting a low with drugs and getting in trouble with the law and maturing on their own. And unfortunately, all of that is carefully controlled by the Catholic machine.
Is Mark Wahlberg come from what does his family have any political ties? I know he's a devout Catholic. Are there any?
They absolutely have ties to both the entertainment, both the acting industry and the music industry. His brother he had his own music background. His brother's got a music background. Yeah, so I don't know so much about politics, but definitely in regards to, my boy Chris Evans, his uncle is in politics, right, George?
Okay, can I throw out another? Can I just throw out another political name? Although they're not nearly as prominent outside of New York, you have the Walsh family of Syracuse, New York. The current mayor of Syracuse. And I know Eric mentioned this earlier, that's an old Roman name, is Ben Walsh. He's the son of James Walsh and the grandson of William Walsh. Both his dad, James, and his grandfather, William, went to St. Bonaventure's College in New York. All three Walshes have been mayors of Syracuse.
George, I don't have anything on the Walsh family, but I do want to mention how the vast majority of these Roman Catholic power families are hardcore, communist, vicious, vehement left, far, far left. Most of them are abortion through all three trimesters, all the way up to infanticide. The Sebelius family is a great example. And in no way, this proves how full of shit the militant is. The Roman Catholic Church is against abortion in the same way that they're at war with Freemasonry. Not at all. Not at all. The Roman Catholic Church wants abortion all the way. The blood of the innocent must flow to feed the Catholic Church. In no way, shape, or form are any of these far left Roman Catholic power families in any danger with having their hands slapped by the Catholic Church. They're all loved, openly loved and adored by clergy, particularly the clergy in power. Every once in a while, you get a lowly priest somewhere there in bum screw Egypt will deny a Joe Biden communion, the Eucharist. Big deal. He's nobody. In the same way that you can get any bishop anywhere to excommunicate somebody, I'm sure there's a hierarchy of excommunication. That you can get excommunicated by the Pope. It's thoroughly different from being excommunicated by any bishop. Who cares if some bishop over there in India excommunicates you? Does that have any effect upon your Catholicism? No. It's a much bigger deal if the Pope himself excommunicates you, and that will never happen.
Well, this goes to the Roman belief, I think, and this is why I think it's so profound. Where I think where the resurrection of the Roman Republic is, you see like how close the Pope and the Vatican are to the U.S. government. If you kind of view the U.S. government as like the ancient Roman Republic, but now you have now the Romans have their own church system in place with the Pope as the figurehead. It's just I think it's a profound realization. Just because going back to the ancient, like there was a college of pontifices in the ancient Roman Republic where all the emperors like were viewed essentially as the supreme pontiff, in a sense. And this kind of ties into my because it's just a profound realization. I just wanted to show this photo because I think George is getting short on time here. I think this ties into what we're saying. And there's a comment addressed about Buffalo, New York, and I found some really interesting symbolism in the Buffalo Police Department. But I just came across this statue here in Cincinnati a few days ago, and if people know, Cincinnati was named after a Roman statesman, Cincinnatus. And
yeah,
to your point about communism, Johnny, this is the main point I wanted to make. The Roman Republic essentially operated as a communist society because, for the point being that the state assumed the absolute power of life or death over their citizens. Which is communist.
Baptist Calvinist President George Washington was a member of the secret society of Cincinnatus.
Well, actually, maybe I think the Wikipedia page actually pulls up a bunch of members. Like Ben Franklin was a member. Even like Truman was a member. The society is still present to this day. But you can see Cincinnatus here is holding a fasces. And, the current mayor of Cincinnati, his last name's Cranley. I think John Cranley. He went to Jesuit John Carroll University. The chief of police in Cincinnati, Elliot Isaac, went to Jesuit Xavier. So the same ancient system of aristocratic feudalism is still in place. And I got a question here about making sure my screen's still on. I got a question about an update, Johnny, on the Buffalo police situation.
Yeah, wasn't it the Buffalo Police Department that admitted openly to the corruption of cutting loose priest criminals?
Absolutely, and I'll pull up the article here. I have that linked here, but I found this is the headquarters of the Buffalo Police Department. Their headquarters is at a U.S. courthouse building called the Michael J. Dillon U.S. Courthouse. But you can see the two ancient, and the fasces was the official symbol of the ancient Roman Republic, because the lictors were essentially the police in the Roman Republic, and the lictors would carry these fasces to enforce the law. But you can see this is at the headquarters of the Buffalo Police Department. You see the Roman symbolism is right out in the open. And, when you see the symbolism like this, and here, I'm going to pull up the story. It's predictable, who they're serving. The police are serving Rome. And this was the story we covered. Marching orders kept Buffalo cops from child molesting priests. But it's just, I think there needs to be the real awakening in America needs to be, Rome centered, to see how Rome has completely taken over, like the legal, just starting with like the legal system. At least the whole American legal system is based off of Roman law, and that's why I found again every single, even when I was in Cleveland, I found the fasces at the Howard Metzenbaum courthouse. I found quotes from probably 30 different courthouse websites admitting that the fasces is in the courthouse building. So again, just the point being, we're very in deep at this point. We're kind of so immersed by this Roman system where I think education is really the first answer.
Absolutely.
The first answer for us to get informed.
If you could pull it all together, we need to get going. If you have any of those really pregnant quotes of how the Buffalo police, it was like a retired cop. There's never anybody that's actually in service at the time. They wait until they leave office and then they retire. If you have anything that you can skim real quick and
oh yeah, I got those quotes up here. Actually, let me see. I'll pull up the screen share so people can see the. I have the story reprinted on my Jesuit World Order blog, and I bolded some of the quotes. Okay, so this came from the ex-cop Harrington. He said both the cops interviewed here were they were both ex cops on the Buffalo Force, weren't current cops when this interview took place. But Harrington said the department's unwritten policy was that Catholic priests did not get arrested. Said Harrington, who investigated vice crimes for 17 years and retired in 95. I never had any experience with priests who molested children and never heard of any priest molesting children, but we had priests we caught with pornography or masturbating in the city parks, and our orders were to turn them over to the Buffalo diocese. The diocese would deal with them, but they would not be arrested. And you see,
these are the people who swear an oath and take a paycheck from you, the citizenry, to protect you. And when a Roman Catholic priest, like I said an hour ago, when you require every adult who serves you to be celibate, there's guaranteed to have an unhealthy outlet for their natural sexual drives. And playing with themselves in a public park is the least of what they do. And when something as little as that happens to as worse as raping your children, the cops come and they kick them loose. Are you kidding me? Is there anything that tells you how right we are more than that? I'm ready to close the stream with that, guys.
Yeah, just in this right after Harrington said the policy only extended to Catholic priests. He says, we caught clergy from other religions, we arrested them. You see here, this is the Buffalo Police Department logos. These are Roman symbols. These aren't Protestant symbols on the Buffalo Police Department, or Jewish symbols.
All of it. Good for you. All of it. It's not even Freemasonic. It's Roman. All of it. George, we're gonna go. Go ahead and give your 25-minute, half an hour closing speech.
Well, okay, I'll try to be a little bit more concise than that. Okay, how shall I bring this up? I still have a number of dear friends who have Trump delusion syndrome, and it's not like they're anti-Trump, they're pro-Trump. I keep hearing people saying, well, Donald Trump is a breath of fresh air. He's exposing all this corruption in DC and other places. If you're never elected, all this truth would not be coming out. People would not know about Ukraine. And I keep scratching my head. And
George, George, I recall the old, was it Wendy's commercial that I used to play on my podcast, on my show all the time? Where's the beef? Where's the beef? Show me the money. What is the substance of this clown doing anything positive? Zero, George. Zero. No substance at all.
Yeah. Yes, I understand. And I said, well, you can say Merry Christmas again, and
yeah, you can say Merry Christmas now, and that's according to Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council. We are so grateful. There's a good Protestant evangelical Christian, right? Military guy, Marine Corps guy, Tony Perkins, who's been there forever doing nothing. Hey, at least we can say Merry Christmas now.
Well, they should call it Merry Saturnalia, because
it is. Through
the Roman custom.
It's all resoundingly Roman Catholic, meant to distract from Jesus Christ with paganism.
Well, think of this, just Clint made this point. Just there's so much gaslighting. Just I know, especially the Republican Party, they bring Jesus into their political talking points. But the fact that should I think wake people up to the Roman founding of America, because the Romans don't believe in Jesus necessarily. And Edmund Paris quotes a Jesuit priest in his book, The Vatican Against Europe, and the quote is basically the Jesuit saying, "Think we believe in Jesus? Come on now!" Like
some of the best, most vicious, most blasphemous attacks on Jesus Christ have Jesuit and Roman Catholic sources, from Voltaire to a very, very long list. They know.
Carlin, he mocks.
Yes, devout Roman Catholic repeatedly mocked Jesus Christ. That all comes because those at the top, those who are a fourth vow, know that they actually serve Satan and not Jesus Christ. They know. There's no way around it.
But I think it's really telling that Jesus is not one of the lawgivers busts. Jesus is not one of the 23 lawgivers, or Martin Luther. There's a lot of I think it's I don't know if it's necessarily misguided, because there's a lot of the Romans have really hid how they created the United States Republic. It's all there through the symbolism and the correspondences of the founders and
stuff. Good for you.
But a lot of people say America is a Protestant nation. If it's a Protestant nation, why isn't Martin Luther one of the lawgivers? Why isn't John Calvin?
Instead, we have two Crusader popes. Great find, by the way. Oh, and by the way, I still wish you back, Mark, a Merry Christmas. That's completely devoid of the fact that everybody everywhere acknowledges Christmas in some way, shape, or form. Please, I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to go and attack people that say, well, we have some stuff up on our house. It's the difference between the season and the facts behind it. You can be well informed and not be an a-hole about it. So
that's why I advocate to know the history. Don't shun people for doing Christmas and stuff.
Guys,
know the history of the.
Great job today, guys. I'm glad. I'm sorry I was late.
Well, thank you for joining us. Could I just mention one other thing? I just recently came across a website called The Blue Collar Catholic. I don't know his real name, and I mentioned this to you in a phone call. Well, to me, he's far more effective than Michael Voris, because, well, he comes across as a regular working stiff. Well, Michael Voris is polished. He was in secular media. He knows the proper lingo. Whereas the Blue Collar Catholic is, well, he's somebody whom you might have a beer with, if you drink beer. And however, he's far more pernicious than Michael Voris, in my opinion, because if you just watch a few of his videos, he talks about the attacks on the Catholic Church and the criticisms that Protestants will make about the Catholic Church. Case in point, the Crusades or the Inquisition, or the current sex abuse crisis. And the Blue Collar Catholic has said, boy, the Inquisition was justified, but some of them may have gone overboard. Thousands of people died, perhaps unnecessarily. They're heretics. They're bad people. They need to be punished. But maybe 3,000 or 5,000 people, maybe somewhere between, it's less than 10,000, maybe like 5,000, according to the Blue Collar Catholic.
Is he saying that for the total Inquisition death total, only 10,000?
You're maybe 5,000, if that.
George Aquinas himself called for the death of heretics. Aquinas himself called for the death of heretics.
Yes, well, and of course Catholics will say, well, they lived at a different time. There's more people were more religious, people were more devout, and
book, George, pause. In my book, in this book that's out right now, Romans of Mass Destruction, I have stories and pictures of Iraqi who was tortured Inquisition style, of having his arms rotated behind his back and yanked out of their sockets, just the exact same way the Inquisition did to Girolamo Savonarola, the Dominican dissident monk, who was a true reformer of the Catholic Church.
Well, that's a profound realization, and I know you've heard you mention, Johnny, that waterboarding dates back to the Roman Inquisition.
Yes, waterboarding has its source in the Inquisition torture of forcing water into the victim, gallons of water forced into the victim. Then they changed it to putting a cloth, a rough cloth, over the mouth of the victim, forcing the water into the victim, and then the cloth would go into the delicate throat, and then they'd rip the cloth out of the delicate throat of the membranes, and it would tear up the insides, the person's insides. That's all part of to modern Catholic intelligence agency torture tactics and techniques.
Well, right? And just going way back to the Republic, I realized that murder was actually legal in the late Roman Republic, from like 200 BC all the way up to the time of.
If you're a member of the right family.
Well, actually, and this is where the Praetorian Guard concept goes right back to ancient Rome. Also.
It takes a true Praetorian like Dan Mitrione of the FBI and CIA and police force to know how to torture somebody. A good friend of Jones, Jim Jones.
If people can read Dan Mitrione's New York Times obituary, he was idolized.
Loved him
by a Catholic bishop.
Loved him. They sent him to South America to teach the fascists in South America how to torture. Good police chief, good FBI agent that Roman Catholic Dan Mitrione was. Guys, I gotta get going. Great job today.
Okay, well, likewise, and I guess we'll have to do this soon. And well, don't know how to say. I realize they'll probably be doing some sort of family function, but have a good time next week.
Yes, happy holidays and Merry Christmas and all that, and take care, guys.
Yeah, happy holiday season, guys. And I'll just remember, for the Praetorian Guard, the National Sheriff's Association has the Roman fasces on the logo. If people, I've shown that on my channel before, but that should tell you everything you need to know about the current status. And law enforcement have been given like immunity status by the Catholic Supreme Court in the United States, just like how it was, in the Praetorian times in the Roman Republic. Where did that photo I have? Looks like I lost my tab. I'm just gonna pull that up for people now that so they can see it. And in the video I did down in my feed called "The Roman Catholic Church Owns the Police," I found that almost every single significantly sized town in America and Canada has the Knights of Columbus honor the local police department. And the Knights of Columbus also use the Roman military fasces that you see right here on the National Sheriff's Association. And this is also the laurel wreath of ancient Rome here on the logo. Yeah, so definitely, there's definitely. I highly recommend looking into the parallels between ancient Rome and the current United States. And we know that the founder, like the Jesuit priest John Carroll, was one of the founding fathers of America, who founded Georgetown University. Appleton's Encyclopedia said there was no greater power at the time of the American Revolution than the Jesuits, and than the Jesuits in the person of John Carroll in Maryland. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the quote there. Hey, do you have anything you want to wrap up with, George, before we sign off here? Looks like your mic's muted. Never through some of the chat before we sign off.
Okay. One of the things that Eric John Phelps mentioned recently is the big difference between fascism and communism is that fascists openly worship the Pope and communists secretly worship him.
Well, actually, yeah, I would. I like that. Yeah, Vladimir Lenin put a statue in honoring Catholic Sir Thomas More up in the Soviet Union, who's now a saint of the Catholic Church. I think that's covertly honoring the Pope.
Okay, and of course, as I said, Vladimir Putin, technically speaking, he's not a communist, but he was a colonel in the KGB.
Although, George, I would actually classify him. He said the fall of the Soviet Union was the worst geopolitical event of human history.
Oh,
or of the 20th century. So I would say Putin's communist, and him and his gangster clique basically own all of the wealth of Russia. Like 70% of the wealth in Russia is in the 1%.
Okay.
It's kind of a crazy robber baron, because basically after the fall of the Soviet Union, they just gave all of the established wealth and infrastructure to a set of established elites. But keep going back to your point. People are aware Putin has went to see the Pope, and the Vatican Secretary of State Petrio Parlin went to Putin's private Sochi residence in 2017.
Oh, okay. So they're all, and of course, we've already established in previous broadcasts, Rome invented communism about 40 years ago in South America, and they just have been perfecting it. They've had to tweak it somewhat when they brought it into Europe. They had to repackage it and make it appear to be Jewish and Freemasonic. But so, of course,
the Vatican created the European Union, which is Catholic communist in principle.
Yes. So.
And I would say just another quick question with Russia. I think we mentioned on the way back on probably been 5 or 6 streams since we've mentioned this. But Mikhail Gorbachev, the president of the Soviet Union, when it collapsed, Pope John Paul II mediated the fall of the Soviet Union between Reagan and Gorbachev, and then Gorbachev joined the Club of Rome think tank. Club of Rome is a powerful New World Order think tank, just like the Council on Foreign Relations, for instance. But the Club of Rome is in Zurich, Switzerland. And Gorbachev has been a board member there since he joined immediately after the Soviet Union fell, which is interesting.
And of course, Gorbachev has spoken of the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco before. He did so in the 1990s.
It's very you can see how controlled world politics is. Just looking at Gorbachev's actions there. Mm-hmm. And the fact too, like we mentioned earlier, the fact that the Pope mediated the fall of the Soviet Union is a huge, significant fact. Even there's numerous occasions in the 20th century where the Pope has officially mediated, between two conflicts or between two opposing parties to reach the synthesis.
Yeah, and
just recently, Pope Francis was offering to, he's still offering to mediate in the Venezuela situation between devout Catholic Maduro and Jesuit-trained Catholic Juan Guaido.
Well,
Juan Guaido, he went to Andres Bella University in Venezuela, which is Jesuit.
Well,
that's where the Black Pope's from, if people don't know. But Pope Francis openly came out and said wants to mediate. There's a long history, especially in South America. Like I know the Pope, one of Banzer's coups in the 70s, was the Pope mediated between Banzer and the opposition, Hugo Banzer. Especially in Catholic countries, even the Pope mediated between Bismarck of Germany and Spain for the Caroline Islands annexation, for instance, way back in the 1890s. I just remember it was Bill Clinton, Jesuit-trained Bill Clinton, George, who said that he was amazed to see how vigorously involved His Holiness was in the world, in the affairs of the world. So that tells you a lot. He's very involved in world politics.
Yes, he is. So I was just looking up something on Mikhail Gorbachev. He is a member of the Order of Liberty in Portugal. He got the accolade back in 1995. Now, granted, that doesn't make him a Knight of Malta.
Well, I think Portugal is still to this day, I'd say, a Catholic country.
Yes. And
Yeah, the youth may not be leaving the church, but all the political leadership is strongly Catholic.
Yes, it was the same thing in France, Ireland, Italy, pretty much all throughout Latin America. So I don't have any links to Gorbachev receiving a papal knighthood, but as I said, he does have at least one secular knighthood.
Well, actually, this came from Paul Williams. Quoted Paul Williams was educated, or he was a professor at Jesuit Scranton University, but he wrote a book, Operation Gladio, and he quotes Gorbachev saying that Pope John Paul II is like the greatest moral leader I've ever met. Something along the lines like that.
Okay, well, I know we had to be going, but that reminds me of something that Billy Graham said about Mother Teresa. When she was alive, he says she was the world's greatest living Christian. And speaking of Billy Graham, I understand
Billy Graham really prostituted himself for the Jesuits. Wow, he actually said that.
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, speaking of Billy Graham, the publication that he came out with, Christianity Today, has actually come out and said they think that Donald Trump should resign. Or they've come out and said that this week.
Oh, they did that. Did they say that following the official? Because Trump has been officially impeached by the House. Did they do that following that?
Yes. Well, I mean, it was like the last day or two.
Oh, it's interesting. Well, it got me thinking about this current impeachment. I didn't realize the Jesuits were actually one of the biggest forces behind Nixon's impeachment. It was actually Jesuit Robert Drinan, SJ, who was behind that. And the Jesuits America magazine wrote like the biggest editorial at the time, calling for Nixon to be impeached.
Well, I know
but although that was completely controlled because Nixon had his Jesuit John McLaughlin, SJ, as his speechwriter, and McLaughlin was standing behind Nixon. Just how Trump has his Jesuit coadjutors like Mick Mulvaney and Rudy Giuliani, like militantly backing him up in this process. But it's an interesting parallel. The Jesuits were actually one of the biggest forces behind the Nixon impeachment.
As they were Bill Clinton.
Oh, were there? Was McSorley, or were there Jesuits publicly calling for him to go?
Are you talking about Bill Clinton?
Yeah, with Clinton, because I know his attorney during the Lewinsky impeachment scandal, Robert S. Bennett, went to 2 Jesuit schools. So, I guess particularly they had both sides controlled. But Clinton's attorneys there was Jesuit trained.
Okay, you had the speaker, the U.S. Speaker of the House at the time was Newt Gingrich, who was a Knight of Malta, a Catholic convert. So, yeah, you could say that. And, of course, the Solicitor General at the time was Ken Starr. His young protege was Brett Kavanaugh. So, yes, you could say they controlled both sides of the Clinton impeachment.
It was very interesting. And actually, I realized, too, the concept of impeachment comes from the ancient Roman Republic, which is another interesting... I have to look into it more. I've just really started looking at the delving into the history of the ancient republic. But there were impeachments, in ancient Roman times. It was done by the Senate, just like how it is set up in the U.S. But I noticed the impeachment ultimately, I think it's all a smokescreen because there's no way, and actually like Jesuit trained Bill Clinton, his approval ratings went up after he was impeached in the House and then cleared by the Senate, which is going to happen to Trump. He'll be cleared by the Senate, and then his approval ratings are going to go up.
And he'll be reelected next year by a landslide.
That's what I think is going to happen. There's no reason for the elites to put Trump out. He's been godsend for them. The biggest tax cut for the 1% in American history. There's no reason for them to want Trump out. The military-industrial complex like salivates at Trump. He's increased the military budget by like $100 billion. Like we said, Trump embodies Pentagonism, described by Brigadier General Herbert C. Holdridge.
Okay,
And ultimately, like Trump, he signed the national emergency for the border wall. And actually, interestingly, a Texas judge actually just ruled that Trump's not allowed to use border wall funds, or he's not allowed to use the national emergency as a basis for the border wall funds. But he's being used to create kind of a police state atmosphere while the immigration is taking place. So we're seeing like now Americans are subjected to like checkpoints inside America, more of like a military presence along the southern border, like troops being deployed domestically inside the U.S. But yeah, I'd say this is where we're from. So, he's great friends with Archbishop Timothy Dolan.
Yes, and of course, one of the things about, well, I can understand that because he's always laughing.
Oh, sorry, I didn't catch that last part, George. What did you say?
Well, one of the things about Dolan is he's always smiling and laughing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, in every single photo, that's epitomized in the Al Smith dinner photos. But actually, George, I should probably get going here. I have some company at my place here now.
Okay, well, I guess we'll probably do a show after New Year's.
Yeah, probably maybe the 2nd or 3rd of January.
Yes.
Or something like that.
Yeah, that would work. So I guess, well, I mean, whatever you observe next week, have fun with your family and your friends.
Oh, thanks, George, and you too. Happy holidays to you, George, and happy holidays to everyone that's tuning in the chat. Appreciate all the comments and the support, and we'll see you all in the new year. Yeah, but we'll end it here just because I have to get ready for work soon, and I got some people here in my place. Yeah, we'll take care, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one. God bless.
Well, okay, bye now.
Bye, George. All the best.
Like.